Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Kathy Krausenack. On February 19, 1982, police were called to the Krausenack family home, where they discovered the body of 29-year-old Kathy Krausenack. An axe was found embedded in her head, the only fatal wound. Earlier, Kathy's 30-year-old husband, James Krausenack, had run into a neighbor's house while holding their 3-year-old daughter. He was covered in blood and appeared distressed, reporting that his wife showed no signs of life. While crying and agitated, he waited for police to arrive. James told police that he had left for work at Kodak around 6:30 a.m., where he worked as an economist. He spent the day completing routine tasks while his wife, Kathy, and their daughter, Sarah, were still asleep at home. Kathy had planned to spend the day with their daughter. When James returned home around 5 p.m., he noticed the garage door open, the kitchen window broken, and the glass door between the garage and the house shattered. Realizing something was wrong, he went inside and found his wife lying on the bed. He was shocked and momentarily unable to speak. He then noticed his 3-year-old daughter lying next to the bed, unharmed. To ensure her safety, James took his daughter to a neighbor's house. The neighbor opened the door and saw James, who was frightened and crying. At his request, she called 911, asking them to come quickly because he claimed there had been a murder. Police spoke to Sarah, who seemed unaware of what had happened. She said she saw a multicolored bad guy on her parents' bed and saw her mother with blood on her face. It is extremely distressing for a child to be left alone in an apartment with a murdered mother for an entire day. This was a disturbing aspect of the case. Fortunately, Sarah was too young to fully understand the situation, so it did not affect her mental state much. The neighbors did not observe or hear anything unusual. The police investigated the crime scene but did not find any significant evidence or clues. The murder weapon, an axe, was taken from Kathy's family garage. It had been used to cut the grass. Notably, there were no fingerprints on the axe, suggesting that it had been deliberately cleaned. In addition, forensic experts found no fingerprints inside the house, which was puzzling since 3 people lived there and could have touched many objects. The police found this strange and assumed that the perpetrator had cleaned the entire house. However, the police did notice something strange in the kitchen. A damp bathroom rug was drying in the garage. James claimed that he had no idea why the rug was there and that nothing of note had been found on it. In 1982, forensic techniques did not allow for the collection or analysis of DNA. Police suspected that the incident was a botched robbery, theorizing that the attackers may have become frightened and decided to eliminate Kathy, a potential witness. However, some valuables were still intact. Kathy's bag, which had been left in the kitchen, had been emptied onto the floor, but the contents, money, jewelry, and expensive tea sets, were all there and neatly arranged. This raised an important question: why did the criminals leave these items behind? Even the cash that was openly left on the dresser had not been taken. Perhaps the criminal had scared Kathy, but in this case, fingerprints would have been left on these items. Yet, there were none, which was puzzling. This behavior was unusual, and the police noticed these discrepancies, raising suspicions that the crime scene had been staged. Some items were arranged in a way that suggested they were deliberately placed there. A crucial reason for dismissing robbery as a motive was that nothing had been stolen. Seasoned police officers, who regularly dealt with burglaries, immediately recognized that this incident was different. While murders were rare in Brighton, thefts and robberies occurred almost daily. Police believed that Kathy's death was a premeditated murder. The initial suspect was, of course, her husband, who discovered her body. Police began investigating James. James's friends and acquaintances described them as a happy, even idealistic couple. They had both grown up in the same Michigan city, Kathy came from a family of truck drivers, while James's parents owned a successful carpet store. They met in high school and began dating in college, eventually marrying on May 3, 1974. After their marriage, Kathy continued her studies in economics in Colorado, and in 1978, they celebrated the birth of their daughter, Sarah. Meanwhile, James became interested in further education and pursued a doctorate in economics. James then took a teaching position at the University of Lynchburg in Virginia. In 1981, the family relocated to Brighton, New York, where James found a job as an economist. Kathy was a devoted and caring mother to their daughter, always attentive and loving. However, friends noticed a significant change in Kathy's mood 6 months before her death. She became unusually irritable and restless, though they did not know the reasons behind her behavior. As the police investigated the family's situation, they discovered that things were not as perfect as they initially appeared. The couple kept their problems private, never discussing their issues publicly or seeking advice from others, which made it difficult to gather information. However, police found a brochure for marriage counseling in the family car, suggesting that there had been ongoing discord in their relationship. The police also contacted James's employer and learned that he had misrepresented his qualifications, claiming to have a doctorate. This deception led to him being assigned a role he was unqualified for, resulting in stress at work and further complicating his situation. James's cooperation helped the police gather information, and James agreed to attend the next meeting for questioning, but he did not attend. Less than 24 hours after the murder, he left the city without informing the police. This action of his made the police suspicious. He was intentionally fleeing. Police later discovered that James had gone to his parents' home in Michigan. They found him again and questioned him. He cooperated with the police by providing blood and hair samples for analysis. Unfortunately, DNA testing was not available at the time, so this did not yield any useful results. 10 days after Kathy was found dead in her bed, James hired a lawyer. The police did not have enough evidence to bring any charges in 1982. Police focused on information that James had left for work at 6:30 a.m. It was important to verify this detail and determine whether he could have been home at the time of the murder. Forensic examinations showed that Kathy had died in her sleep between 4:30 and 7:30 a.m., meaning she could have been murdered with an axe shortly after James left for work. While it was possible that the husband had committed the crime before leaving, it was difficult to understand why he would do so and then go to work, leaving their 3-year-old daughter behind. The mother's body remained in the house throughout the day. The investigation stalled. The evidence collected and the documents found did not shed light on the events of that morning. The James had no clear motive, making a jury trial unlikely. If the prosecution lost, they would not be able to bring new charges against him. In 1997, James met his old friend Sharon at a trade show. Their relationship quickly blossomed, and James asked her out, which she accepted. Sharon noticed that James was still deeply affected by his past loss. He seemed shocked by the traumatic event. James shared the basics of that terrible day with Sharon but avoided going into detail, and Sharon did not want to press him for more information. Their mutual understanding helped strengthen their relationship, and they later married. In 1999, they moved to another city, then moved across the country. At the same time, police continued their efforts on Kathy's case. New police re-examined the evidence, leading to the analysis of a large number of items related to the case. The police were committed to finding justice for the woman who had been so brutally murdered. In 2015, the FBI assisted Brighton police in their investigation, which led them to focus on a suspect, Kathy's husband, James. On April 16, 2016, 34 years after the murder, police made a surprise visit to James's home, hoping to meet him and possibly uncover inconsistencies in his previous statements. However, their plan did not go as planned. James appeared calm and welcoming. He chatted with the officers, agreed to have the conversation recorded, and did not request an attorney. They talked for an hour at the kitchen table, but James remained calm throughout the conversation. Eventually, one of the police asked him directly if he had anything to do with his wife's death. James was angry, said that he would never hurt his wife. Sharon defended him, saying that in all the time they were together, she had never witnessed any aggressive behavior from him. He was a caring and loving husband who would never lay a hand on her. She firmly believed that he was incapable of such cruelty. Sharon also participated in the police interrogation. Throughout the interrogation, she never doubted her husband's innocence. She felt that she had seen his sincere heart and kind nature over the years. Although her views seemed naive, she held these beliefs deeply. She never asked about the fate of James' ex-wife, as she was satisfied with the brief explanation he gave at the beginning of their relationship and never mentioned it again. Police found themselves at a dead end once again, prompting the decision to review all the evidence collected for DNA testing nearly 40 years after the crime. The murder weapon, an axe found in the victim's head, was sent to the FBI for analysis. Unfortunately, they were unable to locate any usable DNA on it because it had been tampered with. This was a significant setback. The police then sought to determine when the crime had occurred. One of the United States' leading forensic experts, Michael Baden, analyzed all the available information about the body. He concluded that the woman had likely died around 3:30 a.m., based on her body temperature and the amount of undigested food in her stomach. Therefore, when James arrived at work at 6:30 a.m., he would have definitely noticed that something was wrong. Police were skeptical of the idea of a botched robbery because nothing was taken. They questioned why the robbers would kill a woman who was sleeping and did not witness the robbery. This conflict led to the filing of murder charges. On November 8, 2019, James was arrested after being charged, but the 67-year-old did not confess to the crime. Police used the time of death to investigate a murder that had occurred 40 years earlier. They found evidence that a robbery had been staged. With this information, law enforcement and James presented their case to the jury, focusing on James' alleged involvement in the murder of Kathy Krausenack, his first wife. During the police, investigators discovered a dangerous criminal named Edla Rabbi, who lived about a mile and a half from Kathy's home in 1982. Rabbi was notorious for his harmful taste in women. Despite being arrested several times, Rabbi often received light sentences and served a total of more than 32 years in prison before his death in 2014. He confessed to killing Kathy but gave many inaccurate details, leading to skepticism about his claims. After each time in custody, he hunted for new victims, torturing them. His first confirmed murder occurred in 1991 when he strangled a 27-year-old woman named Stephanie Kopczynski. Although he confessed to the crime in 2012, he maintained that he had no intention of killing her and that the situation had spiraled out of control. Shortly before Kathy's murder, Rabbi had been released from prison in the 1980s. He was questioned and the investigation began but was not considered a likely suspect. Police questioned him briefly and then released him. As a result, James's lawyers claimed the police were negligent. Instead of pursuing the real killer, they chose to blame the grieving husband, James, who they considered the prime suspect. This situation had a significant impact on society. It was revealed that not only was the criminal dead by the time the case was revisited, but the police who investigated it in the 1980s were also deceased, meaning they could not be held accountable for any mistakes. During the original police, the police had only spoken to the murderer once and then disregarded him entirely. Since Edla Rabbi had passed away, he could not be questioned to clarify his role in the case. Nevertheless, many involved in the investigation still questioned whether he was connected to Kathy's murder. Although he confessed to killing Kathy before his death, numerous inconsistencies arose in his account, particularly regarding the handwriting, which did not resemble his at all. This conclusion was reached by all the experts who examined his case. First, he had a history of rape rather than robbery, yet no signs of sexual assault were found. Additionally, the murder weapon, an axe, was not typical of his methods, and the handwriting was evidently different. As a result, police did not consider him a suspect. Years ago, the prosecution was leaning towards the theory that Kathy's husband was her killer rather than a nearby maniac. During the trial, the prosecutor presented the time of death as crucial evidence. However, several defense experts disagreed with the assertion that Kathy died early, with most believing it occurred before 6:30 in the morning. It is believed that Kathy died at 6:30 a.m. after her husband left for work. The investigation was complicated by the fact that Kathy was under an electric blanket, and it was unclear whether it was on or off at the time of her death. If it was on, the temperature it reached was unknown. Experts attempted to estimate the time of death by analyzing the drop in body temperature. Ultimately, there is no reliable method for determining the exact time of death. Experts have differed, resulting in a margin of error of several hours. Another piece of evidence cited by the police was a shoe imprint found pressing down on a garbage bag at the crime scene. This imprint resembled the shoes worn by Kathy's husband, who was absent at the time of her death. However, this evidence alone was not enough to establish his guilt. The prosecutor argued that the husband was the only possible suspect because he had a motive stemming from family issues. After lengthy deliberations at the hearing, the verdict was announced in court. The jury were unanimous in only one opinion, that the crime was too confusing and contradictory, and the evidence too dubious and easily dismissed. Despite this, James Krausenack was convicted of second-degree murder in November 2022 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The verdict came as a shock to many, especially to those close to James who knew him well. They had remained certain that James was not guilty because there was no serious evidence of his involvement. James himself also asserted his innocence. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Natalia Martinez. Natalia Martinez was born in the late 1980s in Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, and she was the youngest daughter in her family. While not much is known about her personality, she had a close relationship with her relatives, especially her older sister, Claudia. Her father was a senior salesman for a large international company that sold household appliances, which allowed the family to live comfortably. Natalia was a cheerful and friendly girl. During her teenage years, she formed a close-knit group of friends who supported one another during difficult times. These friends later described her as sociable and able to connect easily with strangers. After graduating from high school, Natalia began spending more time with her friends. They enjoyed going to various parties and eventually expanded their adventures by visiting the beaches of Uruguay for fun. To celebrate her 19th birthday on January 1st, 2007, Natalia and her friends planned a trip to La Paloma, a small resort town, where they stayed for 2 weeks. On January 16th, they traveled to a nearby resort in the city of Riles, where Natalia was delighted to meet her parents and sister, who were there for a 4-day vacation. The Natalia family had a wonderful time enjoying beach activities and were well known in the town, as they frequently visited. They often returned to the same places, making it feel like a second home. On January 18th, Natalia and her sister Claudia decided to drive to Punta del Este, another tourist town less than an hour away from Riles. They planned to stop at a popular local spa located about halfway between the two towns in the Serra San Antonio area. After their beauty treatment, the girls planned to go to a disco with 3 of Natalia's friends. However, as the evening approached, Claudia felt very tired and decided to go home to their parents. Despite this, 19-year-old Natalia Martinez was determined to stick to her plans. She wanted to enjoy herself, so she went with her friends to a popular party at the local nightclub, La Erin, Canada, where they stayed until around 5 a.m. As morning approached, the girls decided to leave the party and head home. At that time, Natalia was talking with a man named Leonardo Rakovin, an old acquaintance who owned a bookstore. They stopped near the exit and continued their conversation. However, Natalia became so engrossed in her discussion with Leonardo that her friends decided to go outside and get into the car they had arrived in, planning to head home together. The girls got tired and got into the car. One of them decided to check on Natalia, but when they returned to the nightclub, they found that Natalia and Leonardo were gone. The friends realized that Natalia could not have left alone or with anyone else without letting them know. Since they did not see her leave, they began to worry. They went up to the second floor, out of the bar, and saw Leonardo's BMW in the parking lot. The owner was inside the car, and because the windows were tinted, Rosalia and Silva could not see if anyone was in the passenger seat. However, they did notice some movement inside the car. The girls called out to Leonardo to ask about Natalia. He said he was in the car with a friend and mentioned that he had spoken to Natalia briefly before they parted ways. He claimed he had no idea what happened to her afterward or why she didn't return to her friends. The girls assumed Natalia had gone home, so they got into the car and drove to her friends' relatives, who were at the police station, just a 10-minute drive from the club. Rosalia and Silva stopped near the house and honked to get Claudia's attention, trying not to wake the entire family. However, no one responded, so they returned to the club where they last saw Natalia. The girls continued to search for their friend for about 2 hours, but their efforts were unsuccessful. No one knew where she had gone. Around 8 a.m., Silva returned home, exhausted and very worried about her missing friend. Worried about her friend's safety, she decided to tell her parents everything that had happened. She feared something bad might have happened to her friend. Her parents tried to reassure her, telling her to rest and that her friend was probably already home. So, she went to bed. Yet, when she woke up at 11 a.m. that same day, her concerns grew stronger. The entire Natalia family started searching for she. They quickly got involved, and her friends went to the club together to find out what happened. Unfortunately, they were still unsuccessful. The club was closed, and no one had any helpful information. They searched the surrounding area for clues but found nothing. Around 5 p.m., Natalia's family and friends arrived at the police station. Maldonado police investigators received several photos, including one of all the girls relaxing at a club that evening. This helped them understand what the missing girl was wearing so they could come up with a description for the search. The police took their statements seriously and began investigating. Initially, the family said that Natalia had been at a party where she may have had too much to drink and left with someone. However, Rosalia and Silva insisted that Natalia had not consumed any alcohol that night, as she often denied. They also dismissed the police's suspicions that they had used illegal drugs. Police began a search operation. They first went to the location where Natalia was last seen. The club was open, but there were no surveillance cameras at the time. Police spoke to club employees and learned that a group of 3 young men sitting at a nearby table had been trying to approach the women throughout the evening. Natalia's friends confirmed that the men had been harassing them. Despite this information, police ignored the group of young men and instead focused on the acquaintance with whom Natalia had been talking before she disappeared. It was no surprise that Leonardo immediately became the prime suspect, since he was the last person to see Natalia. However, all of Leonardo's acquaintances described him as a kind and calm person who had never shown any signs of cruelty before and was incapable of harming anyone. He was a young businessman. That night, his girlfriend waited for him in the car while he was talking to Natalia. After that, he said goodbye to Natalia and returned to the car with his girlfriend. From the car, he saw Natalia go down the stairs and go out onto the porch. From that moment on, Leonardo was distracted by his conversation with his girlfriend and did not see Natalia again. However, he was not worried about her, since he did not notice anything suspicious around. No one was screaming or making noise. Despite the police's suspicions, Leonardo insisted he had nothing to do with Natalia's disappearance. However, the police did not trust him. They needed to conduct a thorough examination of the BMW he drove away in after the party. Several witnesses reported seeing a similar car in various locations around the city, including near a forest on the outskirts. One man claimed he spotted a couple having sex in a car that matched the description on the night she went missing, near a lake by the woods. Police obtained a search warrant for Leonardo's car. During the initial inspection, they found a long, dark hair on the floor of the BMW and sent it for analysis. However, it did not match Natalia. It belonged to someone else. The interior of the car showed no signs of suspicious activity, no blood, or evidence of a struggle. Police speculated that Leonardo had cleaned the car shortly after Natalia Martinez disappeared, which would explain the clean condition of the car. Police used this detail as part of the evidence against Leonardo. However, they still lacked the evidence to arrest him. On January 22nd, a passerby driving on the outskirts of Polis discovered several items on the roadside. Among them were a woman's handbag containing a wallet and a pair of women's shoes. The most crucial piece of evidence was linked to Natalia Martinez, a case that was currently receiving significant media attention. Recognizing the situation, the witness promptly contacted the police. Unfortunately, the media coverage also led to the spread of various rumors, which Natalia's family had to repeatedly deny. One such rumor suggested that Natalia was involved with drug dealers, implying that she had become a victim of criminal activities. However, Natalia's father publicly refuted these claims in an official television statement. Despite the situation, rumors continued to spread. Some claimed to have witnessed her being attacked or even murdered. Instead of receiving assistance from the media, police found themselves overwhelmed by numerous false testimonies each day that needed to be verified, complicating the investigation. Meanwhile, the media eagerly reported even the most outrageous theories. The story was considered compelling and attracted many readers, causing journalists to add fuel to the fire of chaos surrounding the case. The rumors about the missing girl were leveraged to boost newspaper sales. Natalia's family endured immense pain following her disappearance. A large-scale search operation was organized, involving many police officers, friends, family members, and hundreds of volunteers. It was quickly determined that there was no evidence of the girl near the nightclub, prompting the search to extend into more distant areas of Uruguay. Ultimately, the entire coast was thoroughly searched. Most of the search operations took place on land, using service dogs, and later involving military and civilian aircraft. The City Fire Brigade also participated in the search and requested that the sewer systems be inspected. However, no traces of Natalia were found there either. By this point, law enforcement had largely concluded that Natalia was deceased, as the likelihood of finding her alive was very low. The critical window for finding missing persons is usually 48 hours. A significant finding occurred when a bone was discovered on the Grande Plateau, but tests revealed it was not human. Although the search had stalled and no new leads had emerged, Natalia's relatives continued their efforts. They remained hopeful that she was alive and being held against her will. In 2000, a female body was discovered in the forest near Lake Yulo. The body was in poor condition and was sent for examination to determine the identity of the deceased. This location was several kilometers from the club where Natalia was last seen, and the clothing found on the body led police to suspect it might belong to the missing Natalia Martinez. After the discovery of the body, police remembered a couple who had been seen having sex in a car near the forest, which drew attention to that area. The forensic expert who performed the autopsy struggled to gather important information because the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. To ensure a thorough examination, 5 forensic experts were called in. They determined that the body belonged to Natalia Martinez. Their overall assessments suggested that she likely did not die of natural causes, as there were faint signs of strangulation on her neck. Although they ruled out poisoning from substances or alcohol, they could not find evidence of physical or sexual violence due to the body's condition. It was noteworthy that the victim was found tied with nylon thread, but it remained unclear whether this occurred before or after her death. Several months later, while the investigation continued, an unexpected development arose. The man who had found her belongings on the roadside was discovered dead at the bottom of a cliff near his home. His name was initially kept confidential. Initially, it appeared that the man had voluntarily chosen to end his life. However, all his relatives insisted that he would never do such a thing. He was a deeply religious man, cherished his life, and loved his family. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, sustained long before the fall from the cliff, suggesting he had been thrown off. This led police to believe the 2 cases were linked. But more evidence was needed. The next tragic event involved Natalia's father, Ever Martinez. He had fallen into a deep depression after his daughter's death and the damaging rumors that were circulating about their family. He ended his life at home by shooting himself in the head. His body was discovered by his daughter Claudia and his wife. The police closed the case after confirming that he had acted alone, a conclusion that the family accepted. For a long time, police struggled to make progress in the investigation into Natalia's murder. However, new information emerged from text messages exchanged with a friend just days before Natalia's death. In these conversations, Natalia mentioned a man she had recently met online. It was later discovered that he was one of the men who had been at the nightclub on the day Natalia went missing. These 3 young men were sitting at a nearby table, and several witnesses had pointed them out from the beginning of the investigation, but this information was overlooked. Police identified all 3 suspects, who were slightly older than Natalia. After interviewing them, the police became even more suspicious of their involvement, as the men contradicted each other in their statements about where they were and what they did during the night and morning of that tragic day. After this, the police interviewed a witness whose identity was kept confidential for her safety. She was the girlfriend of one of the men who had been arrested. Her testimony revealed that a young man in the group, Rodrigo Verghese, was involved in Natalia's murder. At the time, he was 25 years old, and police later stated that he had previously provided false statements. During the interrogation, police recorded phone conversations that implicated the Rodrigo main suspect. They collected DNA samples from him, but these were not helpful for the investigation due to the advanced decomposition of the remains. After that, the police reached out to the friends and relatives of the Rodrigo. A young man was called to testify on June 8, 2010, along with his friends who had been at a nightclub on the night of Natalia's murder. They all claimed they had no involvement in the incident. They stated that after spending the night at the club, they hired a sex worker to join them in their continued festivities. However, they denied any connection to Natalia. Rodrigo, the prime suspect, denied spending time with the murdered woman and claimed he did not know her. However, messages from the girl revealed that they had spoken online and planned to meet at a party, suggesting that Rodrigo had lied. Initial questioning did not turn up any clues, but a day later, police spoke to the young people again in the hope of getting a confession. This time, Rodrigo confessed. He explained that he had met Natalia online, and after chatting for a while, they decided to meet at a club. Unfortunately, their conversation did not go well, and as dawn approached, he suggested they go to another nearby nightclub. Rodrigo misled her. He wanted to be alone with her. During this time, he began to harass her, according to his confession. When she rejected his advances, he seemed to accept it. However, Natalia then suffered an asthma attack, which led to convulsions and ultimately her death, as she did not have her inhaler or any medication with her. Rodrigo was confused and unable to help her. He stated that he panicked during her attack and didn't know what to do, especially when she stopped showing signs of life in his car. After the party, he planned to return to his family's farm, a short distance from the city. However, after Natalia's death, he decided to dispose of her body to avoid any further repercussions. He headed for the woods, thinking it would be a good place to hide her. There, he tied Natalia up, dragged her deeper into the woods, and covered her body with branches. But this was only part of the story. A witness walking along the beach claimed to have seen a couple having sex, and Natalia's body showed signs of strangulation. It seems that Rodrigo neglected to mention that he had strangled and raped her at the same time. Police were later able to confirm that Rodrigo's other friends were not involved in the incident, so they were released shortly after Rodrigo confessed. Rodrigo was formally charged with murder and taken into custody. After the confession, it appeared that the prosecutor's office would easily prove Rodrigo's guilt. However, in mid-2010, as preliminary hearings began, Rodrigo Verghese recanted his confession. He claimed he admitted to the murder under police pressure and insisted he did not commit the crime. This assertion seemed unlikely because his confession included numerous details only the actual killer would know, including the precise location where the girl's body was found. Still, Rodrigo maintained his innocence. Despite the evidence against him, his defense team supported his statement and sought to demonstrate that Rodrigo was not at the club that night. They presented mobile phone data and a statement from his employer confirming that he had been working his usual evening shift that day. The next day, he attended a friend's wedding, and no one noticed anything unusual about his behavior. On September 2, 2010, Leonardo Roccovan, the bookstore owner who was initially the main suspect in the investigation, was called as a key witness for the prosecution. Leonardo testified that during a conversation, he had an argument with a young man. Leonardo identified the young man as Rodrigo. This indicated that Rodrigo was definitely at the nightclub and not at work. Natalia's friends also confirmed that he was at the nightclub that night. Forensic experts, working with the prosecution, provided insights based on the autopsy results. They noted that, due to the typical symptoms of asthma, the girl could not have died from an asthma attack so quickly. While she did experience an asthma attack, it could not have occurred instantaneously. It took several hours. Additionally, there were signs of strangulation on the victim's neck, which was likely the cause of death. Unfortunately, the experts could not provide further details about the victim's injuries. From late August to mid-September 2010, the prosecution successfully constructed a narrative of the crime, leading to Rodrigo Verghese being found guilty of Natalia Martinez's murder. He received a 9-year prison sentence. However, in February 2011, Rodrigo's lawyer submitted an appeal, claiming that the court's ruling was incorrect and that the prosecution was biased. The lawyer argued that they failed to present a witness to the kidnapping or murder, nor did they provide any compelling direct evidence. Natalia's family expressed disappointment, saying that the criminal received a lighter sentence than the family had expected. Disappointed by this leniency, Natalia's relatives filed a civil lawsuit against Rodrigo Verghese for causing harm to Natalia's family, holding him responsible for her father's death. Initially, they mentioned that Rodrigo should pay $15 in damages. However, after further discussion, both parties agreed to increase the amount of damages to $7,000. The court rejected the request for a longer sentence. On October 27, 2014, the lawyer achieved his goal when Rodrigo, 29, was pardoned after serving only 4 years and 2 months in prison. His release was largely due to his good behavior while in custody. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Hannah Anderson. The Anderson family was a classic American household. Parents Christina and Brett worked hard to give their children, Ethan and Hannah, a comfortable life. Ethan enjoyed activities like fishing and racing video games with his friends, while Hannah, 16 years old, was into dancing, social media, and cheerleading. Like many teenagers, Hannah was carefree and unaware of the world's dangers, never imagining that harm could come to her or her family. However, their lives are about to face a tragic incident, as a sinister person was secretly watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Christina had a short marriage before meeting Brett. After her first marriage ended, she was lively and energetic, enjoying dance and fitness. She loved trying new things and was looking for someone special to share her adventures with. Brett was smart, hardworking, friendly, and kind, and the two quickly connected. Their friendship soon turned into romance. At the time they got married, Brett worked in the telecommunications industry. By the fall of 1996, Christina was pregnant with their first child. As the due date approached, the Andersons' 3-bedroom townhouse was filled with anticipation and excitement from family and friends. On July 22, 1997, Hannah Anderson was born, instantly charming everyone with her bright blue eyes and light-colored hair. Her birth was a joyful occasion for the Andersons and their loved ones, marking an important milestone. Brett and Christina, known for hosting gatherings and barbecues, had created a close-knit group of friends and family. Brett's best friend, James Lee DiMaggio, was a significant part of the family, sharing many outdoor adventures with Brett. At first, Hannah would join her dad and Uncle James, but as she grew older, she started spending more time with her mother and friends. Ethan, on the other hand, enjoyed accompanying his dad and Uncle James on these adventures. Born on October 8, 2004, Ethan was a brave boy who loved learning about sports and fishing from his dad. During a difficult divorce, James found comfort and support in the kindness of the Andersons, who were always willing to help those in need. In 2009, he acquired a property in the Mountain Empire area of San Diego, California, about an hour from where the Anderson family lived. This is a picturesque 2-story log cabin with a private 3-car garage. The area was rural, with fewer than 400 residents, making it perfect for a hunting getaway. Once James had fully furnished and decorated the cabin, he invited Brett, Christina, and their children to use it as a vacation home whenever they liked. Brett was devoted to his job, often working long hours to support his family, which kept him away from home often. Similarly, Christina was busy with her job and taking care of their children, leaving little free time for other things. Meanwhile, their teenage daughter Hannah was going through a phase where she desired more independence and spent most of her time on her phone, deeply engaged in social media. Despite Brett's hectic schedule, he always made time to keep a close eye on Hannah, ensuring she avoided negative influences and stayed within his safe boundaries. Hannah's best friend was Marissa Chavez. They had a lot in common and were almost inseparable, enjoying activities like dance, cheerleading, hairstyling, fashion, makeup, and talking about boys. They loved being the center of attention. Hannah was a smart, adventurous, happy, and outgoing person who lived life without worrying. Her parents, Brett and Christina, supported her as she became more independent and pursued her interests. Hannah spent her time coaching young cheerleaders and spending quality time with her younger brother, Ethan. In 2013, Hannah was in her second year of high school in Lakeside, while her brother Ethan was attending Linda Lake Elementary School. During this time, Brett was having trouble at work and started looking for a new job. In April, he received a promising job offer, but it required him to be away from home for extended periods. After discussing this opportunity with Christina, they decided it was the best choice for the family. Brett moved to Tennessee, but promised to return home to celebrate Hannah's 16th birthday, an event he was determined not to miss. When Brett was away, Christina relied more heavily on their network of friends and family for support. Despite his own financial struggles and the possibility of losing his home, James offered to help. He even considered the possibility of moving to Texas as a solution. Brett's absence did not reduce James's involvement with the Anderson family. James often drove Hannah and Ethan to their activities and kept them entertained, essentially becoming a second father figure to them. James also welcomed Hannah and her friends into his home, providing a space for them to hang out without their parents around. James set clear rules to create a safe environment for the teenagers while Brett was away. No boys were allowed in the house, and his bedroom was off limits. Despite this, he allowed for some minor rules to be bent. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, Brett deeply missed his family and made it to call them every other day to check in on their well-being. He also remained in close contact with James, updating him on his new work challenges and relying on him to keep Christina and their children safe and supported. Christina would drop off Hannah at the cheerleading gym in the morning, where Hannah mentored younger cheerleaders. After the coaching session ended at 4 p.m., Hannah would wait outside for Christina to pick her up and take her home. Hannah was looking forward to seeing Marissa at home, who was eagerly waiting to hear from her, but unfortunately, Marissa never received a message from Hannah. At approximately 8 p.m. on a Sunday, a resident from the Mountain Empire community called the San Diego County Sheriff's Office to report a house fire. The fire had spread to both the main house and a nearby smaller structure. Despite the best efforts of the firefighting team, the flames initially difficult to control. The fire was particularly notable in the small town for its severity. The upper floor of the house had collapsed, and a gray SUV was found parked nearby. It took nearly 2 hours for the firefighters to extinguish the flames, even though the fire station was only a 3-minute drive away. Once the fire was brought under control, the firefighters conducted a thorough interior search to check if anyone was inside. While inspecting the smaller adjacent building, a firefighter noticed a strip of green tarp. Upon closer inspection, 2 legs were found protruding from the entrance of the detached garage. A body was found under a tarp, face down, with the upper part merged into the tarp, making it difficult to identify the sex at first. However, the clothing and hair suggested it was a woman. The fire had burned the area, melting the tarp to her hair, skin, and skull. There was a large amount of blood on the floor beneath the body, indicating a struggle before the fire. She had been restrained, with rope tied around her, duct tape wrapped multiple times around her mouth and neck, and her ankles bound by white plastic rope. A small brown dog was found hiding under a sleeping bag next to the woman's body. The license plate from the burned-out SUV was identified as belonging to Christina Anderson, leading to the assumption that her remains had been discovered. The medical examiner's examination revealed that Christina had suffered a severe throat injury. When the body was turned over, Brett was overcome with grief, still reeling from the news he had just received from the police, that his wife had been found dead in a violent manner. The shock was overwhelming as Brett struggled to comprehend how something so horrific could have happened to Christina, in their own garage, with no sign of their children or James. Brett felt a sense of helplessness, haunted by the fact that he was not there to protect his family when they needed him most. The discovery that their family dog, C, was also involved made the situation even more unbearable, leaving Brett to wonder how such cruelty could be inflicted on the ones he loved. When the investigation began, detectives have discovered that Christina Anderson, a 42-year-old woman, was the victim. Her 2 children, 16-year-old Hannah and 8-year-old Ethan, have all gone missing. The crime scene was at the home of James Lee DiMaggio, a close friend of the family and the owner of the house. James, 40, was also missing, along with his blue Nissan car with California license plates. As the investigation unfolded, this information caught the attention of Brett, a friend of James's. Although he didn't want to suspect his best friend, but Christina's body was discovered in James's garage, and his children, along with James, were missing, he felt compelled to act. Brett promptly boarded a flight to San Diego, ready to face the disturbing possibility that his friend might be involved. The police searched the area around James's home, talking to neighbors, and they said that saw Christina, Ethan, and the family dog going into the house the night before. This was the same night James had a party to say goodbye before his move to Texas. In California, an Amber Alert was issued, which is a national system used to quickly tell people about child abductions. News of the alert quickly spread through social media, and people in the community immediately started helping. Marissa, who was one of Hannah's closest friends, and some of their classmates, took charge of handing out flyers in the area. During a thorough investigation of James's burned-down home, fire investigators made a disturbing discovery: the severely burned body of another victim, believed to be Ethan, a child. Brett was in shock upon hearing the news, and it took time for him to come to terms with it. However, as the harsh reality of never being able to see his son again sank in, it ultimately became too overwhelming for him, and he breaking down. His only comfort was the hope that Hannah might still be alive. Having already lost his wife, son, and pet, the thought of losing his daughter too was too much to bear. If James had indeed kidnapped Hannah after what he did to Christina and Ethan, she was in extreme danger. Detectives tried to determine the whereabouts of Hannah and James by questioning everyone they knew, including friends, relatives, and associates. James had been a steady presence in Hannah's life since she was born and was like a father to her, a fact that the entire Anderson family respected. Most people believed that someone outside of their circle had caused harm and taken them, but no one had any idea who that person might be. As of August 5th, neither James nor Hannah could be found and their phones had not been used. The media published their photos and detailed descriptions, asking the public to report any sightings of them. California's alert system was functioning properly, ready to issue notifications nationwide through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. With no other potential suspects, the focus of the investigation turned to James. The discovery of several trash bags filled with new camping gear in the garage's attic space suggested he had been preparing to live in the wilderness. The seized items included a portable stove, packaging from a hunting knife, and a box of handcuffs, leading investigators to suspect that James had taken Hannah to a remote area, possibly planning to escape to Mexico or Canada. The search also uncovered other concerning items, including explosives, gasoline containers, and a tarp. Authorities also found numerous letters written by Hannah that James had saved for unknown reasons, the details of which were kept confidential. The investigation aimed to determine why James might have abducted Hannah. It was soon discovered that the fire had been intentionally set using an explosive device with detonators, indicating that the act was premeditated. James' acquaintances have confirmed that he has in the wilderness survival skills, suggesting that he may be evading capture in the wilderness with Hannah. The case gained international attention in 2013 and led to a global search for James. At a press conference, Brett directly appealed to James, asking him to release his daughter. He urged his former friend to spare Hannah's life, given that he had already lost so much. The investigation found surveillance footage from the Pine Valley checkpoint, which is near James's home. The footage showed James's vehicle with Hannah visibly sitting next to him on August 4th. This sighting occurred before the fire but after Hannah was last seen, offering some hope for her well-being. By the time James picked up Hannah from middle school at 4 p.m., their phones were already turned off. Despite this, records showed that James and Hannah had made 13 phone calls to each other beforehand. The discovery of Hannah's letters in James's attic and their shared outings sparked media speculation about a possible connection between he and Hannah. Marissa provided a significant clue to investigators, recounting a car trip in which James's behavior seemed unusual. During this trip, James shared up about his strong feelings for Hannah, suggesting that he wanted to pursue a romantic relationship with her. This story portrayed James as being intensely infatuated with Hannah. As Hannah matured and began to create some distance between them, investigators speculated that James's intense infatuation could have driven him to extreme and impulsive actions. His motivation, according to this theory, was to keep Hannah isolated from others. This motivation may have led to the arson, and possibly even to Christina's death. It's possible that Christina witnessed something between James and Hannah that made her a threat to James's unrealistic plans, ultimately leading to her tragic demise. A new break in the case occurred Wednesday, August 7th, in Idaho. On the previous day, a group of experienced outdoor enthusiasts, consisting of a 71-year-old former sheriff named Mark John, his spouse, and another couple, went on a horseback ride in the remote Boise National Forest. This area, known as the River of No Return, is notorious for its challenging terrain. During their ride, they came across two hikers, a man and a young woman, who stood out for their unusual clothing. The girl was wearing pajamas and tennis shoes, while the man wore a gray sweatshirt and sneakers. Neither hiker had any rain gear, and they had set up camp on a ridge with no access to water, indicating that they were inexperienced with hiking. This thing notable for the man's behavior, as he pulled the girl close, and their intentional avoidance of interaction with others. In addition, they see the girl was holding a cat in her arms. What those who saw them at the time didn't know was that the couple were the main character of a nationwide search. It wasn't until after they returned home and watched a news report about James and Hannah that they realized who the couple was. This prompted them to immediately contact law enforcement. The fact that the girl held a cat was a particularly significant clue, as it matched the description of James's household, where a cat had gone missing following the tragic fire, a pet shared between Hannah and him. On Friday, a large group of law enforcement officers gathered in Cascade, Idaho, to search a rugged area near the River of No Return. This difficult-to-reach terrain covers a vast area with dense forests, towering mountains, and deep valleys, causing cell phone signals to be undetectable, making it an ideal place to hide. A search team consisting of state police, FBI agents, and local law enforcement thoroughly searched over 400 miles of this challenging landscape. The team discovered a blue Nissan, easily noticeable due to its missing license plates. The vehicle was quickly identified as belonging to James, despite being disguised with branches, leaves, and other natural cover. On Saturday, August 10, 2013, a U.S. Marshal Service aircraft carrying out an aerial reconnaissance mission over the forest north of McKay Lake made a significant discovery. The crew spotted a two-person blue tent and two individuals near the lake. A man was removing his shirt, while a woman stood nearby. Notably, the woman caught the pilot's attention by desperately signaling for help with a piece of fabric during the flyover. The two individuals were later identified as James and Hannah, marking a crucial turning point in the search operation. The FBI's hostage rescue team carefully positioned themselves in the area, waiting for the right moment to rescue Hannah from her captor. As the sun began to set, the team saw their chance. When James, Hannah's abductor, went into the forest to gather more firewood, the team made their move. Hannah quickly spotted and ran towards her rescuers. However, James, Hannah's captor, also saw the rescue team. He immediately fired his gun, and the team responded by returning fire. James was struck by multiple bullets and, despite attempts to save him, succumbed to his injuries. Once Hannah reached the safety of the rescue team, she seemed physically unharmed, but was visibly shocked. She clung tightly to the agents, her eyes fixed and her body trembling. The rescue team immediately flew Hannah to a nearby hospital in Idaho, where her father was waiting for her arrival. Unfortunately, before Brett arrived, the FBI shared devastating news with Hannah. Her mother and brother had not survived the fire. Hannah was now prepared to give a statement to the authorities about what happened, but without James to confirm her account, some details would remain unclear. Hannah recalled that the event started on August 3rd, when James hosted a farewell gathering at his home before leaving for Texas. Christina, Ethan, and their dog attended, but Hannah not to go. When Hannah found out that James would be picking her up instead of her mother, she felt uneasy. During the car ride, he got lost on the way to meet her, and Hannah had to call him multiple times to guide him to the correct location. Hannah initially felt at ease with James, as they shared laughter and jokes. However, upon entering his home, she noticed something odd. Her mother and younger brother were nowhere to be found, despite their belongings being scattered around. Her concern grew as she saw her mother's purse, still containing money and cards, abandoned on the floor. James's demeanor then changed drastically, and he presented Hannah with handcuffs, his eyes now empty and emotionless, as if someone or something else was controlling him. She had never seen him act this way before, and his sudden change was unnerving. James tried to reassure her that her younger mother and brother were safe, claiming they were in the garage with the dog and urging her not to worry. But after being forced to take several pills, Hannah eventually lost consciousness. Hannah woke up in James's car, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans. She soon fell asleep again, likely due to a sleeping medication. Earlier, James had threatened to retaliate if she tried to signal for help, leaving her fearful of attempting escape. Even in private moments, James kept a close watch on her while they were in the forest. Hannah found the thought of escaping nearly impossible due to the heavy rain, her inadequate clothing, and the discomfort of carrying a heavy backpack. Lacking wilderness survival skills, she felt completely hopeless and unsure of how to escape her situation. However, taking advantage of the opportunity when James was obscured by trees, she took the chance to signal for help to a passing plane from the U.S. Marshal Service. The question remains unanswered as to why Hannah was still wearing her pajamas, as it is known she was at school earlier that day. She spent several days recovering in a hospital before returning to San Diego with her father. The Anderson family struggled to protect Hannah from the invasive media attention she received. However, Brett Anderson, despite his own immense pain and loss, showed remarkable resilience. He felt comforted watching his daughter grow up and move on to a happy. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Magwad family. The Magwad family consisted of parents Cruz and Lila, and their teenage children, 16-year-old Louis and 18-year-old Gwen. Louis Magwad, the youngest member of the family, was known for his charisma. Despite his calm nature, he had an incredible energy about him. People often sharing their deepest feelings with Louis because he radiated warmth and understanding that made others feel comfortable opening up. He was accepting, inquisitive, and creative, enjoying activities like playing guitar, reading, and drawing. After finishing high school, Louis hoped to study law. Gwen, the older sister, was known for her hardworking and lively nature. From a young age, she had climbed through all the ranks of the Scout movement, racking up an impressive collection of badges for her achievements. During her final years of high school, Gwen took pre-med classes at a nearby university, aiming to pursue a career in the medical field. In her free time, she devoted herself to volunteering, always ready to help those in need. At a mutual friend's party, Gwen met Janice, who worked as a nanny. During the event, Janice was busy taking care of children. Gwen was surprised to learn that someone her age was already working. As they became friends, Gwen asked Janice how she became a nanny. Janice revealed that her parents had abandoned her on a cargo ship, where she was later found by a kind stranger. This kind-hearted person tried to find Janice's family by posting her information and photo on social media and the internet, but no one claimed her. As a result, Janice ended up in the care of the Philippine Social Services. Her first clear memory was feeling lost on a big ship, longing for a carefree childhood and the comfort of a mother after a small fall. Janice aspired to academic success so she could go to college, but her circumstances forced her to work instead of study. Gwen and Janice grew closer as they shared various activities, including experimenting with makeup and hairstyles, taking photos, and creating TikTok videos. While filming a dance routine they had choreographed, Louis, the playful younger brother, would often make jokes from behind the camera, causing everyone to laugh. Their friendship was so enjoyable that the Magwad siblings suggested to their parents that Janice be welcomed into their close-knit family. One day, the siblings called a family meeting in the living room to discuss adding a fifth member to their household. They proposed taking in Gwen's 17-year-old friend, Janice, an orphan who had been working as a live-in maid in various homes since she was 8 years old, without any opportunity for education. Louis and Gwen asked their parents to allow Janice to live with them, offering to share household responsibilities in exchange for providing her with a stable home and emotional support. Cruz and Lila had always taught their children to help those in need, so after careful consideration, they agreed to give Janice a chance at a better life as part of their family. In the Philippines, a young woman without proper resources or support could end up homeless. The Magwad family, deeply religious, saw their ability to help others as a blessing from God. They welcomed Janice into their family through a formal adoption process, completing all necessary legal procedures. Mr. Magwad worked as an elementary school teacher and was highly respected by his colleagues. His wife, Lila, was the principal at the same school. Although their income was modest, they were considered wealthy in their community because they owned land and could provide for their children financially. Gwen and Louis's parents were very strict and responsible. They avoided spoiling their children with expensive gifts and did not give them too much freedom. Each family member was given specific tasks to do around the house and was expected to help with household chores. The children were also expected to do well in school, attend church on Sundays, and be supportive of each other. Despite their parents' tough approach, Gwen and Louis truly admired and appreciated their parents' caring and loving nature. The Magwad family's decision to adopt Janice highlighted their close and supportive relationship. After the adoption, Janice moved into Louis's old room, and he began sleeping on the living room sofa. The family welcomed Janice with open arms, making her feel like one of their own. They took care of her basic needs and enrolled her in school, so she no longer had to worry about supporting herself. This was the first time Janice could focus on being young and exploring her future aspirations. The adoption strengthened the bond between the siblings. They continued to enjoy activities together, such as photography sessions and family vacations, and returned from their breaks feeling refreshed. However, the transition wasn't without its difficulties. Many adoptive parents face challenges when adopting a new child to the family. The child has to get used to a new environment, learn new rules, and develop trust, which takes time. Fortunately, the Magwads benefited from Cruz and Lila's education, patience, and ability to relate to their children. The incident occurred a few months after Janice joined the Magwad household, which had a small pig farm. After selling a piglet, Cruz had $1,200 left over, which he kept in a container in the living room for emergencies. However, when Cruz's elderly parents were hospitalized that month and he needed money for medical expenses, he checked the container and found it was completely empty. Each member of the household strongly denied taking the money. Since the Magwads were not very rich, they conducted a thorough search of their home to find the missing funds. After hours of searching, one of the siblings found a hidden compartment in Janice's backpack. Janice was overwhelmed and confessed to taking the money, revealing that she had hidden the $200 in a secret pouch she had made in her bag. She had trouble explaining why she did it and started crying. Krause was not angry, just confused. Janice was afraid of being punished and possibly kicked out for breaking the trust of the Magwadz's family. However, the Magwadz's family understood that Janice had a very different childhood compared to Gwen and Louis. They knew that Janice had often had to fend for herself, and as a result, it wasn't uncommon for children from orphanages to struggle with stealing when they first joined a new household. This behavior often comes from a deep-seated need to survive, a fear of being abandoned and left with nothing. This causes people to stockpile resources for the future. The Magwad family felt disappointed, but they didn't think the situation was extremely serious. To them, it was similar to times when their own child made mistakes. Now that Janice was a part of their family, they would not abandon her. They tried to reassure her, making it clear that she didn't have to worry about her future because she was a valued member of their household. After this upsetting event, the family grew closer and more united. When school shifted online, Gwen helped Janice with her studies. On December 10, 2021, as their parents were getting ready for work, Janice called them Mom and Dad for the first time, which should have been a special moment. But something unexpected was revealed. Janice, their adopted child, was not an orphan as they thought. She had been secretly communicating with her biological mother through social media. On December 10, 2021, Krause found his two children lying still in the living room. He knelt beside them, trying to find a pulse, but they had none. Overcome with grief, he looked up to the heavens, wondering why they were taken from him. He then remembered his third child and searched for her. Krause went upstairs, hoping not to find another lifeless body, and called out for Janice. He heard a door creak open and rushed into the room, frantically checking her for injuries to make sure she was safe. Janice was unharmed, but for some unknown reason, she was completely soaked. For a moment, Krause was overcome with fear, mistakenly thinking the liquid was blood. Janice, still trying to catch her breath, told her father that 3 people had broken into their house and attacked Gwen and Louis. She had run to her room and hidden under the bed, frozen with fear as she listened to the screams coming from downstairs. She felt helpless, unable to do anything to help her siblings until the screaming stopped. Despite the chaos, Janice had decided to take a bath, which seemed like a strange thing to do after what had just happened. Krause was confused by Janice's actions, but he tried to comfort her and stay strong, even though he felt like his world was falling apart. Lila arrived immediately after the police, finding Janice soaked in water and tears on the veranda. She hugged the girl tightly, thanking God that she was safe, and then asked where Gwen and Louis were. Krause had the difficult task of telling Lila the devastating news that 2 of her children had been attacked. As the principal of an elementary school, Lila was usually calm and in control, even in emergencies, but now she was completely broken. She had no idea what to do, no plan, and no answers. Lila and Janice held each other, crying, as their home was cordoned off with police tape, marking it as a crime scene. The police found several potential weapons in the living room, including a bloody baseball bat, a hammer, multiple kitchen knives, and broken glass bottles. One of the knives was located near the entrance. The authorities collected and documented all of these items to see if they matched the injuries on the Magwad siblings' bodies. Gwen had multiple stab wounds on her face, chest, and abdomen. The fact that she was struck in the face suggests that the killer may have had a personal motive, such as jealousy. The brutality of these incidents is extremely difficult to understand. Gwen's body showed defensive injuries on her hands and wrists, indicating that she fought back intensely until the end. Her hair was matted with dried blood, and one of her ears was severed. the coroner found 51 stab wounds on Lewis's body. Such extreme violence goes beyond simply taking a life, suggesting a deep-seated personal hatred. Their bodies were so severely mutilated that mortuary staff had to close the wounds before their parents could make funeral arrangements. The initial investigation was based on testimonies that suggested the criminals targeted a wealthy family in the area, believing no one would be home. However, when detectives saw valuable items like a TV, phone, and laptop in plain sight, they dismissed the burglary theory. Another theory involved a family dispute over land, as Lila had siblings who claimed ownership. Despite rumors of a dispute, investigators found no evidence to support this theory and eventually abandoned it. The community and family sought answers, fearing for their safety after the brutal attack that didn't even spare teenagers. The entire investigative unit focused on solving the crime, and the mayor offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to the attacker's arrest. Detectives conducted a wider search of the house and surrounding area. During this search, they discovered a small pond-like stream near the family of Magwad house. Fortunately, they spotted a plastic bag stuck on a branch in the stream. The bag contained blood-stained clothes that were probably worn by the perpetrator after the crime. After finding this evidence, the police thoroughly researched the Magwad family house for any potential clues or suspicious items. Meanwhile, online users weren't convinced by the burglary or land dispute theories, so they started their own investigation. Although it's unconfirmed, they believe the crime was committed by one of the survivors. Normally, such speculation would be hurtful to those who have already suffered, but in this case, the online users found some evidence to support their claims. For example, many found it suspicious that Janice took a bath after hiding from the attackers instead of checking on her siblings or alerting someone for help. Online investigators think that Janice might have taken the bath to wash off her siblings' blood after harming them. Cruz Magwad eventually realized that Janice's actions were unusual after the initial shock of what happened wore off. At first, he was too relieved to find his adopted daughter safe to think about her behavior. However, he found it strange that she didn't respond when he was desperately calling for his children, considering their home was small and she should have heard him. She only appeared after Cruz found the bodies of Gwen and Lewis, which raised even more suspicions. The inconsistencies in Janice's account raised doubts about her. Her claim that the attackers thoroughly searched her room without finding her seemed implausible. Blood droplets found in her room, which she attributed to the killers, added to the suspicion. The timeline of events also raised questions. Janice messaged her family group at 2:48 p.m., nearly an hour after her siblings' estimated time of death at 2 p.m. This delay in seeking help, coupled with her use of fun emojis in a social media post during a supposedly traumatic situation, seemed at odds with the behavior expected from someone in genuine distress. Amid this period, Lila was utterly devastated as detectives proceeded with their scrutiny. She grieved profoundly for her lost offspring. As her sorrow momentarily subsided, she found herself simply curling up, lying in wait for the grief and the sharp sting of loss to overwhelm her anew. Seeking a diversion, Lila began tidying the home, initiating with Janice's chamber. During this task, she encountered an ID card unfamiliar to her within their home. Swiftly delivering it to the authorities, the ID was that of a 17-year-old male known primarily by the moniker Marlon, whose actual name was withheld. Lila had no acquaintance with Marlon, nor had she ever encountered him. Yet, neighbors witnessed the youth en route to the Magwad family residence on the day in question. A shopkeeper also recognized him, providing directions to Cruz and Lila's abode. Additionally, a motorcyclist reported transporting Marlon to the location on the day the tragedy struck. This discovery marked a significant breakthrough in the investigation, prompting the question of how Marlon's ID found its way into Janice's quarters. When officials called Janice in for questioning, they didn't expect her to be able to explain the presence of the ID of Marlon in her room. However, Janice calmly acknowledged knowing the boy and then, through tears, admitted her involvement in the tragic death of her siblings. Due to her status as a minor, Janice's confession wasn't made public, which left some ambiguity about the extent of her involvement in the tragic events. It's known that Marlon, who worked at a church handling maintenance for services, had some kind of relationship with Janice, although media reports didn't detail the nature of their connection or how they came to know each other. The police discovered a photo on Janice's social media with another young man, which led to an investigation. This young man, presumably her boyfriend, had seen Janice's online plea for help and tried to contact her that day. When he called, someone answered but didn't speak, so he hung up thinking Janice might have exaggerated the situation. The investigation took a turn when the police located Marlon. His denial of involvement became untenable when Gwen's phone was found in his possession. To make matters worse, he had recently been arrested for possession of illegal substances. Despite her mother giving her up to the Magwad family, who thought they were taking in an orphan, Janice actually kept in secret contact with her biological mother, Michelle, and with Juanita through social media. This revealed that her story was more complex than initially thought. Janice's childhood was marked by great hardships, with her family struggling to meet basic needs like food. Her diet consisted mainly of sweet potatoes due to lack of resources. The situation was made worse by her father, who frequently drank to cope with financial problems, further increasing the family's difficulties. The details about how Janice became separated from her family are still unclear. It's unknown whether she was abandoned or simply got lost, but it's certain that she was found alone on a cargo ship on September 22, 2013. The Magwads offered Janice a loving family environment that she had never experienced before. Seeing the care and protection that Gwen and Louis received from their parents, in contrast to her own traumatic childhood, Janice experienced a mix of emotions. Although she was adopted, she received the same affection as the Magwads' biological children and was expected to contribute to household chores in the same way. Janice struggled to cope with expectations, shared affection, and family responsibilities. She craved exclusive attention and wanted to make the most of everything the Magwads could offer. Her desire to enjoy the perks of being an only child clashed with the reality of her situation, where love and material benefits had to be shared with other family members. Janice knew she could never surpass Gwen and Louis in the eyes of the Magwads due to their biological connection, and she saw eliminating them as the only solution to this inequality. The subsequent investigation uncovered text messages in Tagalog on Janice's phone, suspected to be conversations with Marlon, revealing her dark intentions. In these messages, she expressed the desire to end the lives of 7 people without naming them and believed that God would forgive her for her actions if she repented. 6 days after the attack, on December 16, authorities arrested Janice and Marlon. Due to their young age, they were treated as juvenile offenders and not placed in regular prisons. In separate trials, each received a 10-year sentence for assaulting Gwen and an additional 22 years for murdering 16-year-old Louis. The relatively lenient sentences, given because of their age, caused public outrage and strong disapproval from the Magwad parents. Seeking justice, Cruz and Lila appealed to the media and national officials, calling for a review of the court decisions. During an emotional interview, Lila initially expressed her willingness to forgive Janice, believing her terrible actions were a result of her disadvantaged upbringing and limited opportunities. However, everything changed when Lila met Janice face-to-face while she was in custody. As Lila looked into the eyes of the girl she had once considered her own, she hoped to see signs of remorse or inner conflict. Instead, she was met with a cold, detached stare filled with resentment and devoid of empathy or regret. This shocking encounter forced Lila to withdraw her offer of forgiveness, realizing that the girl they had once welcomed as a blessing had actually brought them an unimaginable nightmare. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson was born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She had a younger brother named John, who was a favorite in the family. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and participated in soccer and volleyball. Uniquely, Rachel aspired to be a funeral director since she was a child. She studied at Youngstown State University, focusing on the study of human remains. She took her studies seriously, which helped her rank among the top students and earn a scholarship. Afterward, she attended Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science in Mortuary Science. Following her graduation, Rachel joined the Ohio Funeral Directors Association and moved to Columbus to begin her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She approached her work with deep respect and felt a responsibility to support and assist the families of the deceased. Rachel's internship was nearing its conclusion, and she aspired to secure a permanent position at the Bureau. Unfortunately, her hopes for the future were abruptly shattered. On January 29, 2018, the staff of Shaw Davis Funeral Home was alarmed by the absence of everyone's favorite assistant, Rachel, at work. She did not answer the phone, which worried them because she was very responsible and took her work seriously. The department head asked a coworker to go to Rachel's apartment to check on her and find out why she had been absent in silence. He went to her apartment, but no one answered his knock or call. He contacted the manager of the apartment complex, but this attempt was unsuccessful, as it was only possible to enter the apartment with the tenant's permission. Her colleague then called the police to the residence of She. When they went inside, they found nothing scary. The apartment looked completely normal, except for the leftover food on the table. Noted that Rachel, who adored order, couldn't leave food without putting it away in the refrigerator. This caught the attention of her coworker, who insisted on a more thorough inspection of the apartment in the presence of police officers. During the inspection of the bedroom, he tried to look in the closet, but when he wanted to open the door, he thought something was wrong. With effort, he yanked the closet door open and screamed. Hidden inside was Rachel's bloody body. Officer Frank Scaney called forensics, and the apartment complex area was cordoned off. In her own apartment, Rachel Anderson's bound body was discovered in a bedroom closet. She was stripped to the waist and partially wrapped in a blanket. Her head was wrapped in a shirt, and a black article of clothing was tied around her neck, with part of the fabric stuffed into her mouth as a gag. The autopsy of Rachel Anderson revealed the horrific violence she endured that night. She had been both strangled and stabbed. The examination showed that she suffered a cut on her scalp and fractures at the base of her skull. A stab wound penetrated the back of her neck and extended into the left side of her brain, applied with such force that it shattered part of her skull. Additionally, the autopsy confirmed she was strangled with a cord from an electric blanket, which led to bleeding in her sternoclavicular muscles and eyelids and caused her eye blood vessels to burst. Forensic evidence showed that Rachel had bruises and red marks on her ankles and wrists, indicating she was alive when the suspect tied her up. A DNA sample was found on the rope and on Rachel's body. The coroner concluded that Rachel died from stab wounds to the head and neck, contradicting the previous theory that she had been strangled. After interviewing several employees from Rachel's workplace and her ex-boyfriend, who provided an alibi, the police investigated various theories related to the attack. Detectives returned to the victim's apartment to search for evidence about the attacker. They found Rachel's purse on the living room floor, but her purse was empty. 2 weeks after the crime, Rachel's mother discovered a 9-inch steak knife, which had been used to stab Rachel, in a box in her apartment. This led detectives to initially think it was a robbery. However, the violent nature of the attack indicated that the attacker was not just a thief, but rather a maniac who took pleasure in dominating the victim. Investigators considered various motives but had no suspects for a while. The details of her death were kept confidential to maintain the investigation's integrity. After a while, the investigation obtained DNA samples from different areas of Rachel's body and the crime scene. Unfortunately, these samples did not match any records in the Special Criminal Database. Surveillance cameras on the street recorded two people driving Rachel's car around the city after her death. During this time, cash was taken out from her debit and credit cards. Furthermore, location data revealed a phone number that was in Rachel's apartment between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. on January 28, 2018. Investigators examined the evidence to determine the caller's locations at particular times. By tracking the phone number, they identified the suspect as 54-year-old Anthony Pardon. He has an extensive criminal history, which includes several rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder, prior to the murder of Rachel. He has spent a total of 33 years in prison for his crimes. The man had a difficult upbringing. He was raised by his grandparents before moving in with his mother. As a child, he was diagnosed with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder because of social challenges. In March 1979, at the age of 14, Anthony was temporarily committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. Later that July, he was placed under court custody and transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. By December of that year, he was again found guilty of making threats and was moved back to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he entered foster care. In 1980, Anthony was adopted by a family. He was charged with abuse involving the son of his foster parents. The son was 15 years old at the time of the incident, which occurred while Anthony was babysitting. His foster mother had gone grocery shopping. Anthony later informed the Columbus police that he committed the crime out of anger following an argument with his girlfriend. As a result, Anthony was placed under supervised probation as a minor. On November 13, 1981, 16-year-old Anthony was permitted to visit his girlfriend's mother, who was 39, to use the phone. Instead of asking for help, he threatened her with a butcher knife, assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He then tied her hands and feet, gagged her, and put her in the trunk of his car. Anthony drove to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and threw her into the river behind the Valleydale ballroom. When he saw that she was partially clothed and able to stay afloat, he waded into the creek and forced her head underwater. Luckily, she was rescued by a passerby who frightened Anthony away. The boy then escaped before the police came, using the money he had stolen from her to buy tennis shoes and workout clothes. In May 1982, at the age of 17, he was convicted of other crimes in Franklin and received a prison sentence of 5 to 25 years. During his time in prison, he committed several rule violations, such as possessing a weapon, setting a mattress on fire, and engaging in fights. Overall, he spent more than 24 years in prison for his crimes and was released in November 2006. After gaining his freedom, Anthony moved to Georgia and used a fake name to apply for jobs. In 2007, he was charged with forgery and convicted in Floyd County, resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. He was also sentenced to 20 years probation and required to wear an ankle GPS tracker. In June 2017, Anthony was released from prison and returned to Ohio. Due to an interstate agreement between Ohio and Georgia, he was monitored by the Adult Parole Authority and had to check in with the Sheriff's Department every 90 days. The Ohio Adult Parole Authority failed to provide a monitoring device as requested by the judge, citing concerns about the duration of supervision and budget constraints. As a result of this negligence, known criminal was allowed to roam free. On August 21, 2017, Anthony was discovered with a prostitute in his car. Just 6 days later, he was stopped for driving without a license. During this encounter, the police found a kitchen knife and a shotgun in his possession, yet, oddly enough, he was not arrested. And now, Anthony is the prime suspect in the murder of Rachel Anderson. One piece of CCTV footage shows Rachel's car parked outside a store. A man exited the passenger side and entered the store, but the driver was not seen on the footage, complicating matters. After the police interviewed store employees, they were able to identify the man as Slits, a local vagrant. A few days later, he was questioned at the police station. He stated that he was approached by an older man passing by, who had offered him the opportunity to cash in cards belonging to his ex-girlfriend. Slits accepted the offer, which made him a co-conspirator in the case involving Rachel Anderson. Slits confirmed the identity of Anthony and detailed the route they took on January 28, 2018, while trying to use Rachel's stolen credit cards. On February 9, 2018, after several days of surveillance at his sister's house, law enforcement successfully arrested Anthony Pardon. The 54-year-old, who had previous convictions, faced 9 charges, including aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. On February 4, 2020, the long-awaited trial began. On the first day, 4 witnesses took the stand, including Jonathan Kennedy, a co-worker of Rachel's who found Anderson's body. The manager of Rachel's apartment complex also provided testimony. Officer Frank, who was parked outside the apartment when Jonathan found the body and had seen the surveillance footage, testified as well. Rachel's younger brother, John, and Special Agent Joshua Durst gave their testimonies on February 5, while lead detective Art Hughes testified on February 6. On February 6, the inmate expressed his dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new legal representation. Anthony was intentionally delaying the process. On February 10, prosecutors presented a latent print expert and other specialists to explain how technology identified the locations where Rachel's debit card was used, including at the crime scene. The defendant's sister testified that he had given her Rachel's debit card, and claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. Later, she became aware through television news reports that the card actually belonged to Rachel. The final day of testimony was Tuesday, February 11. The medical examiner confirmed that Anthony's DNA was found at the crime scene. A forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office discussed Rachel's injuries. In the courtroom, the timeline of Rachel's final days was recounted in detail. Rachel celebrated her 24th birthday on January 26 and 27, 2018. On the 26th, her younger brother John came from Warren to Columbus to see her. The following day, they went to the home of her friend and colleague, Jonathan Kennedy, to host a birthday party for Rachel. After a long night of festivities, Rachel and John stayed at a friend's house. The next day, Rachel went to work, leaving her apartment key with John. On the 28th, John returned to his hometown and accidentally brought a key with him. At around 1 p.m., Rachel texted John, who had a key to her house, saying she would come by to pick it up. After speaking with her mother around 6:30 p.m., Rachel went to John's place to collect her key. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, Rachel had to leave it unlocked. She stopped for dinner at her favorite restaurant and arrived back at her apartment around 7:30 p.m. When she returned to the apartment, Anthony was waiting outside. He abducted Rachel, taking her from the bottom floor to the top floor. Using excessive force, he restrained her by binding her feet and ankles with a hair dryer cord and tied her hands with a belt and blinds cords. Once she was immobilized, he wrapped a curling iron cord around her wrists to prevent her from screaming and gagged her. The villain forced Rachel to reveal the PIN numbers of her cards. He subjected her to torture and exploitation. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket. In addition to strangulation, He also caused blunt force trauma and inflicted a stab wound to her head. Afterward, he concealed her body in a closet, leaving her naked from the waist down with the electric blanket cord tied around her neck and a door handle. He then stole her car and used her bank card at multiple stores in Columbus to make withdrawals. The defense did not present any witnesses. The final hearing took place on February 12. The assistant prosecutor delivered the state's opening closing argument, outlining the sequence of events of the crime and telling the jury that Anthony killed Rachel in cold blood. In response, the defense attorney, Larry Thomas, admitted that Anthony had used the victim's credit cards but claimed that he was not responsible for the murder. He argued that the state's case relied heavily on speculation and that the DNA and cell phone evidence did not conclusively link Anthony to the crime. The jury, consisting of 4 men and 8 women, deliberated for about 6 hours over 2 days before finding him guilty on all counts. The prosecution pursued the death penalty for Anthony Pardon due to his involvement in the aggravated burglary that resulted in the death of Rachel Anderson, as well as his previous conviction for trying to murder another woman. Prosecutors decided against seeking clemency because of Anthony's extensive criminal record. The sentencing phase of the trial started on February 18. The defense tried to reduce the severity of the sentence by highlighting Anthony's troubled childhood, but this argument was ineffective. Prosecutors argued that the seriousness of the crime outweighed any considerations for mitigation. Additionally, it was proven during the trial that Anthony was fully aware of his actions when he attacked Rachel. Anthony's mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher all testified on his behalf. On February 19, Anthony gave a 13-minute unscripted statement to the jury, where he talked about his abusive childhood. He described the difficulties he faced after leaving prison, expressing feelings of hardship and helplessness. Anthony stated that the legal system had failed him and that he received no assistance. In his concluding remarks, he assigned blame to the justice system for his current state, without addressing the crime directly or offering an apology. On February 20th, after 3.5 hours of discussion, the jury was unable to reach a decision on whether to recommend the death penalty. Instead, they suggested a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing occurred on March 16, 2020. In court, Rachel's mother, Patricia, wept when the verdict was read. Her father, William, shared a statement reflecting on his experiences during the investigation over the past few years. He was shocked by the behavior of a violent criminal and repeat offender. In the final judgment, the judge sentenced Anthony to consecutive life sentences without parole for aggravated murder and violent crimes, plus 63 additional years for aggravated burglary, kidnapping, and robbery, among other offenses. Rachel Anderson was laid to rest at Pine View Memorial Park. Every year on January 28, her loved ones light a candle in her memory and remember the cheerful, blonde-haired Rachel. She was a beautiful soul who would do anything for her friends. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Joseph Dowse. Joseph Dowse was born on April 13, 1945, into a poor Catholic family in St. Truden, Belgium. As a child, he enjoyed studying languages and religion. After completing his military service, he moved to France in 1964. In 1967, Joseph became a Protestant and later went to Switzerland to study to become a pastor. From 1970 to 1974, he served in parishes in Lens and Bethune. Unlike many others during that time, especially those in religious roles, Joseph knew he was gay and he accepted it. He sought to understand his feelings better and to learn about the LGBTQ community. This interest led him to study psychology and sexology, with the aspiration of eventually establishing a center to support sexual minorities. Between 1974 and 1976, Joseph researched the pastoral and psychological needs of sexual minorities at the Free University of Amsterdam. His studies received partial financial support from a church grant. After completing his studies, Joseph relocated to Paris and established the Centre to Christ Libertar, CCL, inside a theater that primarily screened pornographic films. This choice was influenced by the cultural attitudes of the time, which marginalized the LGBTQ+ community and limited Joseph's options for setting up his center. At the CCL, Joseph was able to connect with wealthy and professional individuals who helped him relocate the center to a better facility. The CCL published a small magazine titled He Liberates, He Loved, and created a publishing branch that produced numerous books on complex topics, including transgender issues, sadomasochism, and controversial subjects like pedophilia. Joseph performed the blessing ceremony for all the couples, which made him and CCL became a controversial topic at that time. In 1982, Joseph became a French citizen and, along with the CCL, helped establish the International Gay Association. Through his wide network of supporters, he learned about the AIDS outbreak and became one of the first educators on the topic in Paris. In the late 1980s, he and his partner, Guy Bonda, opened a bookstore in the city center that offered literature in multiple languages, often addressing sensitive issues and presenting diverse perspectives. A bookstore employee recalled an incident where a large stone was thrown through the door's window, which was perceived as a warning. On July 19, 1990, around 9 p.m., two men claiming to be police officers knocked on Joseph's door. They requested that he go with them. They also assures Guy that Joseph will be back in about 30 minutes. However, Joseph never returned home. After 24 hours without news, Guy contacted the authorities. 4 days later, he officially reported Joseph missing, stating that Joseph had been taken by men who were posing as police. 3 months later, a mushroom hunter found Joseph's remains in the Rambouillet forest, located 16 miles southwest of Paris. The body was so decomposed that it was nearly unrecognizable. An autopsy indicated that Joseph had likely been strangled just hours after his last sighting by Guy. Joseph's murder remains unsolved and has led to a lot of speculation. At the time, there were rumors suggesting he was killed because he had information about high-ranking officials involved in pedophilia. It was later revealed that he was being monitored by the DCRG, the intelligence agency in France during that period. The DCRG believed that Joseph was running a pedophile ring from his bookshop, as he hosted a support group for pedophiles every Sunday evening. The primary suspect in Joseph's case is Jean-Marc Dufour, an officer from DCRG who was responsible for the surveillance. After Joseph's body was found, he and his 4 team members were questioned. Guy recognized Jean as a man who had visited their home in June 1990. At that time, he and another person appeared to be drunk, acting inappropriately, and making a lot of noise. They also continuously knocked on Joseph's door on the night he went missing. Although Jean and his team were nearby meeting an informant, but investigators could not establish any evidence linking them to Joseph's disappearance. There are speculations that the group aimed to scare Joseph, but things went too far. However, there is no evidence to clarify what happened to Joseph in 1991. Jean was dismissed from the DCRG after he shot angrily at the door of an informant, a gay man and illustrator he had previously tried to recruit for the CCL. 7 years later, 2 senior police officials faced trial for wiretapping Joseph's phone from July 12 to July 30, 1990. In 2007, Joseph's case was officially closed, leaving his murder unsolved. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Magali Part. Magali Bertrand was born on January 17, 1982, to Eric Bertrand, a truck driver, and Evelyn, a homemaker. She was the oldest of 5 siblings and grew up in the town of Lancrans. When she was 12, Her parents divorced in 1994, and her father moved to Switzerland to start a new life with another family. Despite maintaining a close relationship with him, Magali decided to stay with her mother in France, as she was affected by the divorce. On July 12, 1998, 16-years-old Magali met 23-years-old Jeffrey Parts. Jeffrey had a miserable childhood. He grew up in an abusive home with an alcoholic father, Patrick, and he spent part of his childhood in foster care. As an adult, Jeffrey had reconciled with his father and forgiven him. Soon after they met, Jeffrey had spent a few days in prison because his ex-girlfriend accused him of domestic violence. When Magali's mother learned about Jeffrey's past, she disapproved of him. This led to a conflict between Magali and her mother, led Magali to move in with her father. There, she found a job as a care worker in a retirement home. In 2000, when 18-years-old Magali, she married Jeffrey. They moved to the town of Ornex, where Magali found a job at a DIY store, while Jeffrey worked as a painter and decorator. On March 26, 2001, Magali prepared breakfast for Jeffrey before he left for work. While they were eating, Magali mentioned that she intended to walk their Rottweiler puppy to a convenience store to buy cigarettes. The store was just a 2.5-mile round trip. However, when Jeffrey returned home from work at 4:30 p.m., he found that neither Magali nor their puppy was there. The kitchen was still messy from when Magali made breakfast, which was unusual because she usually kept things tidy. Worried, Jeffrey contacted Magali's parents, but they hadn't seen her either. By 5 p.m., he went to her workplace and discovered that she hadn't shown up for her afternoon shift and had not reported in sick. Jeffrey went to the police station to report his wife as missing. After that, he returned home and enlisted the help of a friend with an ATV to search for Magali. They called off the search around 5 a.m. so they could get some sleep. Later that morning, around 11 a.m., a young man who was picking mushrooms near his uncle's farm found a woman's body. She was partially undressed and had been burned. At first, he thought it was a mannequin that someone had discarded, but as he got closer, he realized that he was wrong. He quickly ran to his uncle's farm, and they called the authorities. Investigators were able to identify the body as 19-years-old Magali Part using a report filed by Jeffrey and some jewelry that had the couple's names and wedding date engraved on it. Near the body, they also found a cigarette butt, a knife with its blade stuck in a tree, and a wrapper from a chocolate bar. They found a jerry can filled with petrol 300 meters away. An analysis of a cigarette butt found at the scene indicated that it was a Moroccan brand sold exclusively in Switzerland. Importantly, detectives discovered no evidence of a fire where Magali's body was recovered, which led them to believe that she was murdered elsewhere and her body was later dumped in the woods. Magali's autopsy was performed on March 28, 2 days after her disappearance. She had been beaten, suffering 12 fractures throughout her body, and then burned, which made it impossible for the medical examiner to determine her exact time of death. Additionally, the official cause of Magali's death has never been made public. The medical examiner found sperm inside the body Magali's, indicating she had sexual intercourse about 48 hours before her death. However, there was no evidence of sexual assault. The examiner also detected a prescription medication for anxiety in her bloodstream, which neither Jeffrey nor Magali's family knew she was taking. Investigators could not locate a prescription for this medication in her name. Additionally, DNA analysis of a cigarette butt found at the scene revealed it belonged to Magali, even though she did not smoke that brand. Detectives concluded that the cigarette was discarded after her death. This makes this information more confusing. Law enforcement began to suspect that the scene might have been staged. None of Magali's belongings were ever found. However, the Rottweiler puppy was found safe but hungry in a town called Kozy, which is about 5.5 miles from Ornex. Despite the rain that occurred between the 26th and the 28th, the puppy was clean and dry. The puzzling thing was that the dog smelled of Magali's perfume, but its leash was lost and never found. Although the puppy may have been in contact with the suspect, but the police did not take her in for forensic examination and instead returned her to Jeffrey. Investigators traced Magali's last movements and discovered that the day before her death, she had spent time with her husband and 2 friends. One of these friends informed the authorities that Magali had mentioned receiving lingerie from Jeffrey's father as a birthday gift that year. At 10 p.m. that day, Magali checked her voicemail and then turned off her phone. Early the next morning, at 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., the uncle of the man who found her body remembered that his dogs had been barking for a long time, which might indicate they sensed someone in the woods. For his part, Patrick never seems to mention that he gave lingerie to his daughter-in-law, Magali. Patrick claims he went to the couple's house at 10 a.m. on the 26th, the day Magali went missing, to collect the mail, and he stated that she was not there. It is still unclear why Patrick's letter was at Magali's house. On the afternoon of the 26th, in Saint-Jean-Pont, someone attempted to withdraw about €400 from an ATM using Magali's credit cards but failed due to an incorrect PIN. This person also had Jeffrey's credit card and successfully withdrew €35, suggesting they knew his PIN. 3 eyewitnesses confirmed that they saw Magali in the same town on the day she died, between 9:30 and 11 a.m. Her family is puzzled about how and why she was there, as it would have been a long walk for her to get cigarettes. Magali, who was 19, and her husband did not have a car. However, all the eyewitnesses admitted they could not be completely certain that the woman they saw was indeed Magali. Magali's case has been covered by the media very little over the years. The lack of progress in the investigation has left her family feeling frustrated, and they have often expressed their pain to the media. Since the murder happened near the Swiss border, journalists in Switzerland began to take an interest in the case. They uncovered multiple shortcomings in the police investigation, including the loss of DNA, which was later recovered, as well as the disappearance of photographs of tire tracks found at the crime scene. Additionally, the police were so convinced that Magali was the victim of a random attack, they did not pursue further leads. The attack was very violent, indicating that the perpetrator had a lot of anger towards Magali. However, the police did not thoroughly question her colleagues, friends, and family, nor did they examine their cars. Law enforcement also thought that eyewitnesses had seen Magali in another town that day, leading them to strongly believe she had gone missing at the time she was last seen. Consequently, again, they did not investigate other hypotheses. Magali's husband, Jeffrey, was cleared as a suspect due to his alibi. In 2004, 3 years after her death, it was revealed that in the months before the crime, she had missed work multiple times, but Jeffrey and other family members were not aware of this. 2 years later, Jeffrey and Patrick were held in police custody for questioning but were released because there was no evidence connecting them to the crime. Jeffrey has reportedly mentioned that he has an idea of who the attacker might be, but he has never revealed their identity publicly. His father, Patrick, who was questioned due to the lingerie incident, stated that he was at home when Magali disappeared. But the reliability of this remains unclear. There have been very few updates in Magali's case over the years. In 2015, her father, Eric, raised funds to hire a private investigator. The investigator confirmed what journalists had already reported, that the police made several mistakes during the initial investigation and they may have overlooked important information. In 2016, Magali's body was exhumed for further examination, but the results were unhelpful. After Magali's passing, her husband, Jeffrey, remarried and had 4 children with his new wife. Tragically, he ended his life on September 15, 2018. Magali's parents are not sure why he did that, whether it was due to guilt or sorrow over Magali's death. Jeffrey's suicide note did not mention Magali, but his new wife stated that the murder weighed heavily on their marriage throughout. In 2020, investigators re-examined the cigarette but found that the crime scene and discovered fingerprints on it that did not match either Jeffrey or his father Patrick. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Heather Maples. Heather Maples, just 22 years old, has just started college, settled into a job, and feels life is full of promise. She radiates warmth and energy, and is always helpful to those around her. On the morning of August 7, 2015, Heather's co-worker Kelsey Price arrived at her real estate brokerage firm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and began her daily routine. Heather had not yet arrived at work, which did not surprise Kelsey, as Heather was notorious for being late. Kelsey began calling Heather to wake her up but received no response. The night before, Heather had planned to go to a bar with some friends and had asked Kelsey to pick her up if she overslept or did not answer the phone. Kelsey was not concerned and went to Heather's apartment to wake her up. The girls' apartments were in the same complex where they worked. When Kelsey arrived, she found the front door unlocked. When she entered, she found her friend Heather lying on the bed, sleeping on her stomach, wearing only a crop top and no underwear. Thinking that Heather had been partying the night before, Kelsey tried to wake her but received no response. She gently tapped Heather's leg to wake her up, but when she touched it, she was shocked to find it was ice cold. Terrified, Kelsey walked out of the apartment and called 911. Emergency services arrived quickly, with police officer Tommy Massey being one of the first to arrive on the scene, followed by a forensic team who thoroughly examined the apartment. They found that Heather was partially undressed and had bruises on her face. The poor girl's hair was bloody, and blood was also splattered on the walls. It was clear that she had been brutally beaten, tortured, and sexually assaulted. Heather Maples was born on August 23, 1992 in Ocala, Florida. Her mother affectionately called Heather her "Storm Baby," a nickname that perfectly reflected her energy and courage. In 2004, Heather's mother, Jennifer Hunter, welcomed her second child, a son named Ryan. Heather happily embraced her new role as a big sister, however Ryan was later diagnosed with developmental delays. Heather devoted all of her free time to her brother, teaching him to talk, walk, and feed himself. Heather was in 7th grade at the time and spent the following years until Ryan's graduation with her, showing her endless love and devotion to her younger brother. At 22, Heather Maples decided to leave her hometown in Texas and start a new chapter in Tennessee to pursue her dream of becoming a psychologist. Her journey began when her old classmate Chaz called her and invited her to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where he was a student. He described it as the perfect small town for Heather, offering her a great opportunity to prepare for college. Heather agreed and moved to Murfreesboro in January 2015. Soon after arriving, her friendship with Chaz blossomed into a romantic relationship, launching her into a new phase of her life. With the help of her best friend Kelsey, Heather got a job at the office of the housing complex where they lived. Heather was trying to balance her work and preparing for college. She had the support of her friends and family, and things seemed to be going well. However, her relationship with Chaz began to deteriorate, eventually leading to their breakup and Chaz moving out. In early August, she called her mother excitedly to share the great news: she had been accepted to college. Her mother was extremely proud of Heather's achievements. However, a week later, Heather did not show up for work, causing concern among those around her. The police realized that given the nature of the crime, it could be related to Heather's personal life. At the time, most of her friends were considered potential suspects, and there was good reason for this suspicion. After searching the apartment, the police found no signs of forced entry. This suggested that Heather may have known the attackers and may have let them in. During the investigation, several key pieces of evidence were discovered, including unidentified DNA and a hair that did not belong to Heather. These samples were sent for analysis to help identify the suspect. The most important evidence was a bloody fingerprint that was clearly found on the right side of Heather's bed. Police Tommy noted that if someone had intentionally left the stain, it would not have been so clear and precise. This fingerprint was also sent for analysis. In addition, Heather's cell phone was found in the apartment, but there was no password, so the contents could not be accessed. However, Kelsey returned the phone password to the police, and she informed Heather's mother about her death. Police Tommy hoped to gather more information about Heather from Kelsey, especially about Heather's personal life and her relationship with Chaz. Kelsey told the police that Heather's relationship with Chaz was very tense due to his lack of anger control, which often made him aggressive and unkind to Heather. Therefore, Heather chose to end the relationship. This prompted the police to start investigating Chaz. However, things took an unexpected turn when a young man named Michael tried to enter the crime scene, ignoring the warning tape. He had a key to Heather's apartment. According to Michael, the night before Heather died, she called him and invited him to dinner, and he agreed. After dinner, he went home, while Heather went to a local bar with friends. Heather then contacted Michael for help. She called me at 11:40 and said I needed to come to the bar because she really needed my help, Michael recalled. There were people hitting on her and she was upset. "Okay, I'll be there," he replied. Michael explained that Heather was in trouble. A young man named Otavio had been bothering her and was aggressive. After the incident, he offered to drive Heather home. She ordered biscuit gravy, 2 eggs and sausage. "Then I drove her home," he recalled. According to Michael, he last saw Heather at about 2:30 a.m. on August 7th. During questioning, he noted that Heather's front door should have been unlocked because he had her keys. She was wearing a dress that didn't have pockets for them, and he forgot to return them after unlocking the door. Michael appeared frustrated and seemingly honest, but the police still needed to get his fingerprints and DNA. The police contacted the bar to request surveillance footage, which confirmed Michael's statement during questioning. Further analysis showed that the fingerprints and DNA collected at the crime scene did not match Michael. After he was cleared as a suspect, the focus shifted to Otavio, the man who had been with Heather that night. With Kelsey's help in accessing Heather's cell phone, the police's interest in Otavio increased significantly. They found text messages from Heather to Otavio, inviting him to her apartment just hours before her death. The police asked Kelsey if she knew anything about Otavio. Kelsey didn't know much about him, but he seemed like a really nice guy with a good sense of humor. The police were puzzled as to why Heather would invite Otavio to her house after Michael had just saved her from him at the bar. The police then questioned Otavio, asking him what he had been doing yesterday afternoon. Otavio said that he had been spending time with Heather. They had some tequila and then went to the gym. The police then asked about Heather's late-night text messages. Otavio replied that she had sent him a text message around 2:30. When asked if he had seen the text message, he admitted that he had but said that he had been asleep at the time and had only seen it this morning. He reiterated that he had discovered it this morning because he had been asleep. The police pressed Otavio harder, using a rigorous interrogation technique that not all suspects could handle. Witnesses saw you enter the apartment. Phone records confirm you were there. You were with her yesterday. Otavio claims she texted him to come back and that he did not return afterwards. Otavio asks the police what happened to her, and is shocked to hear them say that she was raped and died at her home. In disbelief, he exclaims that it cannot be true. The police inform him that there is DNA all over her. Otavio is shocked by this revelation, seemingly unaware of what happened to Heather. After questioning, he readily agrees to a DNA test, believing that it will exonerate him. The results confirm his innocence as the DNA found at the crime scene does not match his, leading to his being eliminated as a suspect. With no leads, the police work almost around the clock, reviewing surveillance footage and scrutinizing every detail provided by witnesses. On the 9th day of the investigation, as Officer Tommy prepares to leave the office late at night, he receives an important call from the director of the forensics lab. Tommy finally gets the answer regarding the bloody fingerprints taken from Heather's bed. They belong to a young man named Brandon Bowling. The police then ask Brandon how he met Heather, and he says they met at the gym. Tommy starts the questioning gently, giving Brandon a chance to explain what happened that night. He asks if Brandon has ever been to her apartment, and Brandon confirms that he has. Brandon recalls that every time he has been there, she has left the door unlocked. Tommy then asks him if he has ever had sex with her. Brandon confirms that he has, and that they have had sex twice. Tommy continues to ask when was the last time he was at her apartment, and Brandon says that it was probably in July. Tommy continues to ask him why his fingerprints were on the bed, and Brandon insists that he did nothing to her. She had just been accepted to college and he was happy for her. He continues to deny any involvement in Heather's death. After questioning, the police asked Brandon to take a DNA test, arguing that if he was innocent, the test would prove it. Brandon agreed, presumably hoping to be released from police custody, but that did not happen. The police decided not to wait for the test results. They had found substantial grounds for the next step based on the fingerprint match. The police immediately filed a request with the court for permission to access Brandon's phone, which could help confirm his actions and monitor calls and texts on the night of the incident. After receiving court approval, the video from Brandon's phone was one of the most shocking discoveries, even for the most experienced police officers. In the video, Brandon recorded everything from intimate acts to beatings. Heather was still alive at the time of the recording. In February 2018, Brandon Bowling pleaded guilty to assaulting Heather Maples. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. When the trial ended, Heather's mother, Jennifer, approached Bowling's mother in the hallway. Jennifer simply hugged the woman, saying that they had both lost children that day. Unfortunately, Brandon Bowling never explained his motives. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Kenneth Keith. Michael Hawkinsmith, 35, was born in Danville, Kentucky. He was a well-known pastor at a local church in his community. After many years of service there, he chose to take a job at a local pawn shop named ABC, while still working part-time as a pastor. Due to health issues faced by the previous owner, Michael eventually took over the pawn shop. Michael was an honest and helpful person, which allowed him to easily build relationships with customers. In his personal life, he was married to Angela, and they had 2 children, Andrew and Naomi. Michael and Angela owned a pawn shop called ABC Gold, Games and More, located in Danville, Kentucky. They homeschooled their 9-year-old son, Andrew, and cared for their newborn daughter, Naomi. Andrew frequently visited the pawn shop and saw it as his play area. On the morning of September 20th, 2013, the Hawkinsmiths visited the ABC store as intended. During that morning, Dan Smith, a frequent visitor to the pawn shop, arrived as scheduled. Smith, often referred to as the Gold Man, specialized in trading gold between pawn shops throughout the state. Approximately 15 minutes after the store opened, while Michael and Smith were conducting their business, a bearded man entered the store and instructed everyone to get on the ground, leading to a series of alarming events. Andrew was at the ABC store when his mother, Angela, told him to hide. Sensing the tense situation, he quickly called the police to report what was happening. 6 minutes after the alarm was raised, the police arrived at the murder scene. When they entered the building, they discovered a significant trail of blood that led them to Michael Hawkinsmith. They then found his wife, Angela, 38, and another victim, Dan Smith, 60, a broker, on the opposite side of the counter. All three victims had sustained severe injuries from gunshot wounds to their heads and bodies. Police later discovered 9-year-old Andrew and 14-month-old Naomi hiding in a closet. They had endured unimaginable trauma and were left without their parents, becoming orphans. While investigating the crime scene, police discovered 14 spent shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase belonging to Dan Smith. Notably, the victim's personal belongings and all the cash in the register were left untouched, indicating that robbery was not the motive. The investigation was further complicated by the absence of surveillance cameras at the pawn shop, requiring police to look for potential witnesses. An employee from Rainbowy Cleaners, a nearby dry cleaning business, offered crucial information by describing a vehicle that had been parked near the shop that morning. The vehicle involved was a silver pickup truck, driven by a large man with a bushy beard. While one team of investigators searched the area, another team had the difficult task of informing the victim's closest relatives about the tragedy. Michael's parents were heartbroken by the news but felt grateful that their grandchildren, Andrew and Naomi, had survived. The tragic news also reached the daughter of the third victim, Dan Smith. Dan was involved in buying precious metals and was knowledgeable about his field, which helped him connect with various people. His business often required him to handle large sums of cash, sometimes reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. Police began to suspect that Dan Smith might have been the main target of the criminal. Through surveillance, they learned that before visiting the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop, Dan Smith had stopped at the Lawson Jewelry Store in Harrodsburg, located 10 miles northeast of Danville. Inside the jewelry store, investigators found a surveillance camera installed on the far wall, which recorded every customer who entered and exited. They wanted to see if anyone was following Dan Smith. At 8:16 a.m., Dan Smith entered the store, and there were no other customers present at that time. Dan Smith was seen carrying a briefcase that looked exactly like the one later discovered at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. He smiled at the woman working behind the counter and then walked toward the back of the store. A short time later, he came back into view on the footage, talked briefly with an elderly woman who had just walked in, and then left the store quickly. The footage from the exterior camera did not reveal any suspicious activity. The police could only keep an eye on the man, not realizing that he would soon be involved in a tragic incident. Andrew Hawkinsmith was taken to the police station to give his testimony. He explained that he was at the pawn shop with his parents when Dan Smith entered carrying a bag of money. While Michael and Dan were having a conversation, a stranger entered and demanded the bag of money right away. Andrew reported that Dan Smith quickly handed his bag of money to a stranger. He mentioned that his father asked the man to stop, but the man shot his father with a handgun that looked like the one Andrew usually played with. Following this, his mother told him to take his younger sister, Naomi, to the back of the store and hide in the closet. Andrew grabbed his sister and found a hiding spot. At that moment, the criminal aimed a gun at Angela. The 9-year-old boy suspected the stranger was after money. He described the stranger as a very tall man with a fake-looking beard, matching what a witness from Rainbow Cleaners had reported. During their investigation, the police looked closely at the Hawkinsmith family's business. They found out that the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop was actually owned by Steve Devine. Usually, he was present during transactions on Fridays with Dan Smith, but on the morning of September 20th, he was not there. This absence raised alarms, and finding out where he was became a major priority. Steve Devine reported an allergic reaction that morning, leading him to cancel all his appointments. His wife supported his account. Additionally, his alibi and the absence of a silver pickup truck in his possession helped clear him as a suspect. Steve Devine explained that there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop because the previous owner, Kenneth Allen Keith, had removed the security system. The new owner had not yet installed a replacement. Kenneth Allen Keith, 48, is a pastor, just like Michael Hawkinsmith. After being diagnosed with brain cancer, he sold his pawn shop. However, he still owns a similar business called Gold Rush Buyers, located in Pulaski County near Danville's Bowles District. Kenneth and Michael have been friends for 15 years, a bond that started when Michael worked at a church youth camp. The Hawkinsmith family held a deep respect for Pastor Kenneth, who was like a cherished uncle to Andrew. As investigators lacked significant leads, they opted to review the street surveillance footage from around ABC Gold Games and more, as well as several pawn shops. They discovered a camera located on the office building of Danville Rentals, a real estate company. The surveillance video recorded a silver pickup truck at 8:45 a.m., but the footage was too blurry to identify the license plate or the make of the vehicle. However, eyewitness testimony from Rainbow Cleaners was crucial in helping the police identify the vehicle involved. The witness noted that the vehicle was an older model with a unique square body shape. The video evidence also clearly displayed a square rear bumper that matched this description. The color, type, and shape of the vehicle indicated that the police may have located the criminal's vehicle. They then expanded their search to surveillance systems further away from the pawn shop. At 8:17 a.m., cameras at Ephraim McDowell Hospital recorded the same vehicle. Investigators confirmed that it was a silver Dodge pickup truck. Dan Smith's family was heartbroken by his death. Though they were filled with sadness, they attended the funeral and managed to control their anger. Meanwhile, the Danville police appealed to the public for any information about the crime or the vehicle involved. On September 24th, the police received a call from Tracy Hurl, a pastor from Warren, Michigan. He said he was a friend of Kenneth Keith and mentioned that during their last conversation, they talked about the Danville murders. During that conversation, Kenneth seemed different. Pastor Kenneth told Tracy that he was driving to Danville that day to get medication for his wife. Kenneth also expressed feelings of guilt about the situation, as he had allowed Michael Hawkinsmith to take over his former business. It became clear that Kenneth's relationship with the Hawkinsmith family was not as people had perceived. Tracy reported a conversation with Kenneth in which Kenneth accused Michael of being a fraud and claimed that Michael tried to take over his business. This raised suspicions and led to Kenneth being considered a suspect. To confirm Kenneth's alibi, investigators planned to check the surveillance footage from Good Neighbor Pharmacy, where Kenneth stated he bought medication for his wife at 9:24 a.m. Surveillance footage shows that Kenneth entered the pharmacy. However, just a few minutes before, he was not wearing a green jacket or a beard, which are significant features of a suspect. This does not eliminate the possibility that Kenneth could still be involved in the attack. Notably, there was a 6-minute interval between Andrew Hawkinsmith's call to the police and Kenneth's arrival at the pharmacy. The police investigated whether it was feasible to travel from the crime scene to Good Neighbor Pharmacy in just a few minutes. They determined that the trip took approximately 5 minutes, suggesting that Kenneth could have committed the murder, quickly driven to the pharmacy, and created a convincing alibi. Additionally, a key piece of evidence was that Kenneth owned a silver, unregistered 2008 Dodge pickup truck. All the evidence gathered was circumstantial and insufficient for an arrest. As a result, the investigators asked Tracy Hurl to take part in a series of staged phone calls targeting Kenneth. Thankfully, Tracy agreed to help. During these calls, Kenneth eventually expressed his real feelings about the Hawkinsmith family. Everyone had been anticipating this moment. Kenneth started talking about details of the case that had not been revealed before. He stated that he was in Danville, specifically at the pharmacy. He confirmed that he was at the pharmacy during the events in question. Kenneth then clarified that he had left Danville and gone back to Somerset. After that, he drove to the car wash to get ready for a planned family vacation. At 10:50 a.m., camera footage recorded Kenneth walking down the hallway to the cash register with a clear smile on his face. Additional footage from outside the building captured Pastor Kenneth leaving the car wash in the same silver Dodge at 11:25 a.m., which aligns with earlier images from various surveillance cameras in Danville. At that stage, police had sufficient evidence to arrest Kenneth. However, when they proposed a lie detector test to determine his involvement in the case, he responded oddly. He stated that he wouldn't be able to pass the test because, during his military service, he had been involved in special missions where he had killed several individuals. Investigators carried out a search warrant at Kenneth's pawn shop and uncovered crucial evidence. They found a fake beard and a large amount of cash, but there was no legal explanation for how he acquired it. Notably, they also discovered bundles of money tied with a ribbon, labeled with the name of the bank that issued them, suggesting that Dan Smith was a customer. Further investigation showed that the money found in Keith's pawn shop had recently been withdrawn from the account of a deceased broker, raising suspicions about his involvement. Moreover, investigators discovered several .22 caliber shell casings in the pawn shop. Ballistic analysis confirmed that these casings were fired from the same type of weapon used to shoot Andrew and Naomi's parents. Kenneth Allen Keith faced 3 charges: first-degree murder, 3 counts, and robbery. He thought that Michael and Steve were plotting to oust him from the business. Despite his beliefs, there was no evidence to support that Michael and Steve were involved in any conspiracy. When Kenneth met Dan Smith at the pawn shop, he attempted to devise a fake scheme to convince the police that the case was a robbery. However, the plan backfired when the police investigated and found no evidence of any wrongdoing by Michael and Steve. On September 20th, Kenneth drove his silver Dodge Caravan to Danville. He drove around the pawn shop until he spotted Dan Smith's car parked nearby. Kenneth then shot and killed Dan Smith, Michael Hawkinsmith, and Angela Hawkinsmith. After stealing all the cash, Kenneth calmly left the scene of the crime and went to the Good Neighbor Pharmacy. This visit was recorded by surveillance cameras, which helped him create a false alibi. Kenneth chose to wash his car in what seems to be an effort to eliminate any possible evidence that could be on it. Before his sentencing in 2017, Kenneth Allen Keith admitted guilt to all charges brought against him and was consequently sentenced to life in prison. In reflecting on the tragic events surrounding the Hawkinsmith family and Dan Smith, it's clear that this story resonates deeply with many. The heartbreak felt by the community underscores the fragility of trust, especially when betrayal comes from those we consider friends. As the investigation unraveled the chilling motives of Kenneth Allen Keith, it served as a poignant reminder of how quickly a normal day can transform into a nightmare. The innocence of the children, caught in such horrific circumstances, evokes a sense of profound empathy and admiration for their resilience. Furthermore, this case highlights the essential need for safety measures in our communities, reminding us of the importance of vigilance and awareness in our everyday lives. While the final sentencing brought some sense of justice, the emotional scars left on the families and the broader community will linger long after. Ultimately, may we take these lessons to heart, cherishing our loved ones and fostering a spirit of compassion and understanding in the face of unimaginable sorrow. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ana Ramirez. Amanda and Ana Ramirez, born on January 8, 1992, in Camden, New Jersey, USA, are identical twins, arriving just minutes apart. From a young age, they were incredibly close, often wearing similar clothes and choosing the same toys. Their relationship was characterized by understanding and genuine emotion, with conflicts between them being rare. Although they were born in the USA, they come from a family that emigrated from Puerto Rico, a large family with the dream of achieving the American dream. Despite facing challenges, their family's unity and love helped them overcome difficulties. Amanda and Anna were seeking a better life in the USA. When they grew up, their family gave birth to another daughter. Of course, Amanda and Anna stood them out because of their identical appearance. From a young age, their parents emphasized the special bond they had since their time in the womb. They slept in the same crib during their first months, which contributed to their close relationship. As they grew older, Amanda and Anna did everything together and acted as a team. They were very close and always stayed by each other's side. Their mother encouraged this bond, hoping Amanda and Anna would always support each other. And indeed, they did. Amanda and Anna took their first steps together, holding hands to keep from falling. The two girls, who grew stronger together, they were inseparable during kindergarten, elementary, and high school. Their bond stayed strong into adulthood, and it seemed like nothing could break this pure sisterly union, which grew stronger each year. Gradually, carefree childhood ended, and adulthood began. Anna had better relationships with man. She was the first of the twins to get married and become a mother. She was described as a loving and dedicated mother who did everything for her kids. At that time, Anna had completed courses and received certification in a field of activity related to helping people. This accentuates her friendly and positive personality. Colleagues and friends admired Anna's kindness, describes her as a friendly and humble beauty. When Anna became a mother, she had to balance her career with her family responsibilities, striving to create a bright future for her daughter. Later, she had 2 more children. Anna still maintains regular contact with her family, especially her beloved twin sister, Amanda. She often comes home to visit her grandparents, mother, brothers, and sisters. Anna and Amanda still keep in regular contact, they exchanging messages and phone calls to share their daily experiences. When Anna had a daughter, Amanda was eager to know all about her niece and frequently inquired about her. Amanda helped Anna a lot, supporting her in taking care of her children and learning the fundamentals of motherhood. Amanda also aspired to have her own family and become a mother, so she paid close attention to every piece of advice Anna offered. Amanda was kind and caring, always ready to assist. Amanda regularly spent time with Anna and her children. During the first few years of her life, Anna's eldest daughter spent a lot of time with both her mother and with her aunt, Amanda. This allowed the aunt, Amanda, to bond with her niece and gain valuable childcare experience. These skills and knowledge later proved useful to her. At that time, Anna was very busy, and it was with Amanda's help that she was able to manage daily tasks. Whenever they had free time, the sisters often spent time together, went for walks, and relaxed on weekends. Anna and Amanda loved parties and could go dancing all night long. In those moments, they were with their close friends. They were always friendly and cheerful. However, the story of the two sisters had a sad ending. Life showed that even the closest and most sincere connections can be broken in a cruel and heartless way, and the circumstances are so strange that it's almost impossible to tell the truth from the lies. In 2019, Anna and her twin sister Amanda were both 27 years old. Anna had 3 children, while Amanda had just given birth to her first child. During this time, Amanda was experiencing a difficult period in her life. She struggled with emotional problems after giving birth. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, and her family around to support her. To help her sister Amanda through this difficult time, Anna often tried to bring some joy into her life. Amanda frequently met with Anna to have a drink and discuss the difficulty of motherhood, which both sisters understood well. On the evening of June 22nd, the sisters planned to attend a party with close friends. After the party, they intended to visit their cousin before heading home. That evening, Anna and Amanda gathered at home to choose their outfits and do their makeup. At the party, they had a great time, laughing and enjoying themselves. The next morning, Anna and Amanda posted a photo together on Anna's social media page and captioned it that they were having fun. Nobody anticipated that this cheerful post would be the last one where both twins would be alive. Just a few hours later, the police received a call from a distressed girl who said she had found her sister on the street. The caller is Amanda, and she urgently requested the officers to hurry. Amanda reported that Anna had been shot in the chest but didn't know who the shooter was. She noticed a deep cut on the right side of the chest. Anna was lying on the street right in front of their cousin's house, where they had spent most of the evening drinking and taking selfies. Amanda mentioned that they had visited a brother whom they had not seen for a long time, and it seems a conflict erupted there. Around 5:30, Anna was injured and collapsed on the sidewalk. After receiving the call, the medics quickly arrived at the scene. They found Anna lying on the asphalt in a pool of her own blood, while Amanda was not nearby. Anna had lost a large amount of blood, putting her life at risk, so urgent action was required. The police also responded and reached the scene after the ambulance. Anna was on the ground, seriously injured, bleeding, but still alive, with a deep wound in her chest. The medics promptly placed her in the ambulance and administered first aid during the ride. The police hoped Anna could identify her attacker, but she lost consciousness in the ambulance due to severe blood loss and was immediately taken to a medical center. On the way to the hospital, doctors tried to keep Anna alive. However, less than an hour later, at 6:20, the medical center staff pronounced her dead, unable to save her. This news was a devastating shock for her family. Suddenly, overnight, Anna, a mother of 3 children, was gone because of a violent act. The motive behind this senseless act was completely unclear. Anna was kind-hearted, empathetic, and had no legal issues or criminal history. Was she the victim of a random or intentional crime, and should the investigation focus on those around her to find the killer? The investigators quickly noticed that Anna's belongings, such as her money and mobile phone, were left untouched, suggesting she was not robbed. The violent nature of the incident indicated it was personal. Police began questioning neighbors, but they confirmed that Amanda's account of Anna arguing with her cousin was untrue. Several witnesses reported hearing only Anna and Amanda arguing loudly, with no men's voices present. This went on for a considerable time, until the argument stopped and the medics arrived. The police detectives came to Amanda's apartment to gather information. She had called the emergency number and was able to provide valuable information and an explanation of the argument. Amanda confirmed that she had argued with Anna that night, but she went home after the argument ended. Then something unexpected happened. Someone attacked Anna, but Amanda didn't see the attack. When she returned, she found Anna bleeding. When it was reported that Anna had died, Amanda showed no emotion. This might have been due to nervousness or exhaustion, but it caught the police's attention. Even though Amanda received the news of Anna's death with an odd calm, it was something else that caught the police's attention. What really intrigued the detectives were the bloodstains on Amanda's clothes. Additionally, her face had visible scratches and there was dried blood on her head. Her hands were covered in injuries typical of defensive actions, like cuts, suggesting she might have tried to take a knife from someone. The police also found several bloody footprints that went Anna's body on the street to the building's door, up the stairs, and reached the apartment where Amanda and Anna spent the night. At first, when investigators requested to enter the apartment, Amanda was hesitant to let them in because she was frightened and tried to persuade the officers that her injuries were accidental. However, the situation was too suspicious to accept her explanation. Ultimately, Amanda allowed the police to enter without requiring a warrant. At the apartment, they also discovered traces of blood. In the kitchen, they found a large carving knife in the sink, covered in dried blood. Detectives saw this as clear evidence implicating Amanda in Anna's death. She was promptly arrested and brought to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Amanda provided investigators with 3 different accounts of how Anna might have died. In the first account, Amanda claimed she had no idea what happened to Anna, stating that she found Anna already injured on the street. Amanda didn't notice any suspicious people or vehicles, leaving her completely baffled by the incident. Amanda thought that Anna would not have an enemy capable of such harm, so she speculated that her cousin might be involved. She recalled that Anna was conscious at the time but had lost a big amount of blood and was disoriented. Amanda got blood on herself while trying to help Anna and went into shock before entering the apartment, which seemed unconvincing. Additionally, Amanda didn't mention defensive wounds from a sharp object, and the bloody knife found in the kitchen was puzzling. Upon realizing that the police thought her story was a lie, Amanda attempted to revise her story. It's important to note that Amanda was very intoxicated, making it challenging for detectives to follow her narrative. Her testimony was confused and contradictory. Despite this, she offered a revised version of the incident that evening. They were at their cousin's house drinking. As morning approached, Anna drank too much and felt unwell, so she decided to order a taxi. When the car arrived, she said goodbye and left, but no one confirmed that she got into the car. After which Amanda decided to head home. On her way, she discovered Anna injured on the street. Anna had a severe chest wound and was bleeding heavily, but she couldn't explain what had happened. Amanda quickly called an ambulance and notified the police. The detectives attempted to reach the cousin who owned the apartment to verify Amanda's story. However, at the time, this was never done. Realizing her difficult position, Amanda desperately offered a third version of events. She confessed that while they were drinking, a fight broke out between she and Anna. Under the influence of alcohol, Anna lost control and punched she in the face. Although Amanda was momentarily disoriented, but she quickly regained her senses. She recalled feeling furious after Anna hit her, but then she experienced a memory lapse. Amanda intended to enter the apartment to cool down, but moments later, she found herself standing on the street in front of Anna, person who is bleeding. According to Amanda, she doesn't remember what happened during this time. The latest and most credible version of events is that during this time, she went into the apartment and took a kitchen knife. The conflict had subsided by then, although no one witnessed the incident, but all evidence suggests that Anna was killed. When Amanda saw Anna in that state, she went back to the apartment to grab a cell phone and call emergency services. During this time, she tossed a knife into the kitchen sink. She contacted the medics but stayed in the apartment, overwhelmed by shock. Sadly, Anna's injury was too severe, and she passed away. This tragedy deeply affected the Shi family. The news about the incident became a main topic in the media, especially within their local community. Many interviews were conducted, and most people found it hard to believe that such a tragedy could occur between them. Anna and Amanda's sisters were known to be so close, to the point that few can remember any petty quarrel between them. During this time, Amanda was arrested and sent to the county correctional center to await her murder trial. Her lawyer claimed the crime was accidental and argued that Amanda should be released on bail and placed under house arrest to care for her newborn daughter. However, the judge denied this request because of the crime's severity. Amanda was denied bail as she was deemed too dangerous for society. Concerns were raised about her emotional state, so psychiatrists frequently evaluated her. They found no mental disorders, deeming her sane and fit to stand trial. During this time, investigators thoroughly verified all the information provided. It was confirmed that Anna and Amanda did indeed spend time with cousin, who was eventually located and able to testify as a key witness. Although some neighbors heard arguments and the sounds of a struggle, no one witnessed the actual attack. Amanda continued to claim that she could not remember what happened. Cousin confirmed that a quarrel occurred between Anna and Amanda that night, but it ended, and he did not see any attack between them. The cousin stated that then Anna and Amanda had calmed down, and everything seemed normal. He never expected that Anna and Amanda, who had been so close since childhood, to be involved in something as unthinkable as a stabbing. The cousin confirmed that before things settled down, Anna and Amanda did get into a fight. This might explain the scratches on Amanda's hands and face, as well as more serious defensive wounds, deep cuts on her hands, suggesting they fought by a knife. However, the cousin did not know the reason for the sisters' fight. In September 2019, Amanda gave the investigators her final account of events to the best of her memory. She recalled having a fight with Anna while they were at their cousin's apartment, but claimed she was too drunk to remember the cause of the conflict. Amanda explained that at one point, she lost of awareness, and when she regained awareness, she found herself standing over Anna, holding a bloody knife. She noticed the bleeding was severe and worried that she might have been responsible. Feeling overwhelmed, Amanda said she left Anna in the street and fled. She confessed that she would never have acted this way if not for being intoxicated. Amanda, a young mother, recognized there was no excuse for her actions and expressed deep regret, but she stressed that the murder was accidental. The prosecution was certain that Amanda was not being entirely honest and that the attack was intentional. They believed that an argument led to Anna's death. Detectives suspected that Amanda had a motive, thinking she had held a long-standing grudge against Anna. In the end, her intoxication turned this anger into aggression. The investigators were trying to confirm if the act was premeditated. The police suspect that a man, who both sisters were attracted to, was involved in the incident, as he seemed to be the most likely cause of the conflict between them. Amanda explained this because she didn't want her loved ones to know that the death of Anna was due to such a trivial reason. This thing were confirmed by an anonymous source. One day, a man who wished to remain unnamed called the police station. He claimed that jealousy was the motive behind the cruel act against Anna. Anna's aunt also confirmed this thing. She shared the story with both the media and the police. According to her, the conflict arose because of Anna's husband. It was revealed that Amanda had secretly been in love with him for a long time. She envied Anna, and even used her resemblance to Anna to have sexual relations with him. When Anna discovered this, she was furious and accused Amanda of betrayal. The aunt mentioned that Amanda had often bragged that neither Anna nor her husband had any idea about the deception. This seemed especially horrific in light of the murder, giving the police strong reasons to suspect a premeditated act driven by jealousy. Even so, Amanda's family provided her with strong support. Her mother attended every hearing and was moved every time. Her mother realized that one daughter was already lost forever, and Amanda faced the possibility of spending her life in prison, which filled her with sorrow. Other relatives were also consistently present at the hearings, repeatedly pleading with the judge for leniency. They highlighted that Amanda had recently given birth, and her child risked growing up without a caring mother. In addition, the family also opposes the theory that the motive for the attack was a love triangle. Except for an aunt who gave conflicting testimony about affairs, no one had heard such rumors about Amanda's personal life. Everyone saw how warm and close the relationship between Anna and Amanda was. Even during the last party, they seemed very friendly. It was unlikely that they would have maintained such a close connection after the betrayal. Amanda's younger sister, named Monica, who was 19 at the time of the trial, claimed that Anna and Amanda had a very strong bond. She was sure there couldn't be any love triangles in their lives. Both sisters were decent and wouldn't get involved in something like that. Monica said that Anna had been in a long-term relationship with a man named Luis Rivera, who was also her husband. During that time, Amanda also had a boyfriend, with whom she had a child, and they were planning to get married. Therefore, there was no reason for Amanda to date Anna's boyfriend secretly. Monica added that Amanda called her as soon as the tragic incident happened. Amanda cried a lot during the phone call, insisting she did not remember anything. Monica believed that, in her current state, Amanda would be honest and confess if she were guilty. Consequently, she dismissed the prosecutor's suggestion that Amanda was involved with Anna's husband. Anna's husband also denied having any affair with Amanda's, stating that he could easily differentiate them and such deception was impossible. The prosecution continued to question Amanda, they trying to understand the motive behind the massacre, but they couldn't get any more information. Despite the murder, the entire Ramirez family and those connected to Amanda dismissed the idea of a love triangle as fiction. They were convinced that the case materials were fabricated by the police to treat the crime as a premeditated attack, which would mean imprisoning Amanda for a longer time. Anna's husband, Luis, firmly denied the aunt's statements. However, the prosecution continued with this theory, suggesting that Luis was unaware of being manipulated. The accusation of infidelity was central to the prosecution's strategy, which deeply enraged the entire Ramirez family. Amanda's lawyer mentioned that the incident might not be solely related to alcohol intoxication that night. Anna and Amanda drank a lot, but the aggression was due to postpartum depression. Amanda faced emotional issues after her pregnancy and struggled to manage them. Her lawyer explained that her mental state, along with excessive alcohol consumption, triggered an episode of uncontrollable aggression. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough evidence to support this claim. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Amanda was fully aware of her actions. The tears of the mother and the pleas of the sisters had a positive impact. In November 2019, Amanda reached a deal with the prosecution. This deal resolved the controversy surrounding her motive and spared her family the ordeal of a lengthy trial. In the end, Amanda received a sentence of only 6 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years. During the sentencing hearing, Amanda was overcome with emotion, breaking down in tears and trembling. She acknowledged that her actions were inexcusable, expressing remorse to those present. For Amanda, the most severe punishment was the pain of loss she would feel for the rest of her life. Amanda asked for forgiveness. Although inconsolable, but the family said they held no grudges and considered the punishment fair. Furthermore, Amanda's mother and younger sister announced they would continue to support she and her children until her release. Anna's mother took responsibility and custody of Anna's children. All the children went to live with their grandmother. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Rachel McLean. Rachel McLean returned home to Blackpool, UK, for the summer of 1990. She was 18 years old and had just finished her first year at Oxford. Rachel was very busy with her studies and spent all her free time studying. She had a healthy lifestyle and played sports. Rachel had many friends and loved heavy metal music. She joined a local charity, where she worked during the summer. While on a day off, Rachel was relaxing with friends at a local club when she met a bartender named John Turner, who had long brown hair. John was from Nottingham and had returned to Blackpool for the summer. Rachel found him attractive and easy to talk to, so they quickly became interested in each other. That night, they chatted. John attended Rachel's 19th birthday party. After the party, they had a passionate night together. According to John, their relationship continued to develop. However, at the end of the summer, Rachel had to return to Oxford, and John returned to Nottingham. The two cities were just over 2 hours' drive apart, so they could easily visit each other. They spent weekends together and kept in touch by letter and phone during the week. John wrote Rachel long love letters, which she enjoyed. John Turner was born in HMP, but as a child he moved to New Zealand with his parents and settled in a city called Bath. The family lived in 2 countries before John returned to the UK to study at King's College. During his time there, he won the hearts of both students and teachers. He hosted a show on the local college radio station twice a week and was a talented athlete on the soccer team. Rachel McLean was a promising student. Her literature teacher at college admired her achievements. Rachel started college in the same year as John. On Christmas, Rachel invited John to meet her parents and they had a nice evening together. Rachel's parents were very happy with her choice, finding John intelligent, good-looking and confident. John became increasingly infatuated with Rachel but was saddened by the distance between them. During this time, she moved into a student apartment on the first floor of the school with 4 other students. John felt anxious and jealous because one of her neighbors was a man and the boys often visited her house. To cope, he wrote and called her constantly. However, Rachel was very busy with work and study. Since there were no mobile phones in those days, they could only communicate by landline. She would often come home at the end of the evening, exhausted, and go straight to bed. She did not have the opportunity to communicate with John regularly. His dissatisfaction increased with each missed call and he became increasingly jealous. His possessiveness became evident during this time and he complained to her, which began to annoy Rachel. On February 11th, she sent him a Valentine's card, calling him the only love of her life. However, around that time, she wrote in her diary about her lover in very unflattering terms. It seemed that she had doubts about whether John was the person she could spend the rest of her life with. On Valentine's Day, John proposed to her, but she unexpectedly refused, which shocked him. She explained that she was not ready. John said that he understood and would wait. They continued their relationship, calling each other occasionally and rarely seeing each other. 2 months later, in April, they planned to spend the Easter holidays together. John went to Blackpool again on Saturday, and Rachel's mother took her back to Oxford because she had important school matters to attend to on Sunday. They planned to have a quiet day together at her student flat, as it was their last weekend before Rachel's exams. Rachel spent a lot of time preparing for her exams. While she was studying, her boyfriend was watching football in the living room because he was a Nottingham fan. That weekend, the team played in the FA Cup semi-finals, so the next day John got on the train and returned to Nottingham. There was no one in the student flat all week because the young people had gone home for the holidays. Everyone wanted to spend time with their loved ones because they wouldn't have the chance until the end of the year. By Monday, her roommates began to return, eager to see Rachel and hear about her weekend. However, Rachel was missing. Her room was empty, the windows were open, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. The students assumed she was busy with other activities. On Wednesday, her boyfriend, John, tried to call her, but she did not answer. They had planned to stay in touch, but Rachel did not return his calls. John assumed that she was busy and did not want to bother her. However, after 2 days of silence, which was unusual since their relationship had only recently improved, John began to worry. He called again, but still received no response. The next day, he tried again, but was unsuccessful. There was no social media at the time, so John left a message on her answering machine. But she remained silent. He also sent her a letter by regular mail, which he sent as soon as he got home. The letter arrived in New Mexico on Thursday, and John thanked Rachel for a wonderful weekend and wished her luck with her exams. On April 19, 1991, 19-year-old Rachel failed to show up for her exam, which was especially worrying because she had been studying hard and the exam was extremely important to her. When the exam proctors tried to contact her, they were unsuccessful. Her parents also had no idea where she was, prompting them to report her missing to the police. The Oxford police were initially skeptical. They received dozens of missing student reports each month because parents went to the police station after parties. In 99% of cases, teens sobered up from drinking returned to school within 24 hours. But that was not the case. This diligent student had been missing for days and had not been heard from at all. None of her friends knew where she was, so the police became interested in what had happened. They immediately went to the apartment where Rachel had gone missing. Detective Susie Krug was looking for information about the students who had been in the same room as Rachel. Victoria Clare, Margaret Smith, Sarah Hume, and John Forby. The friends immediately pointed to Rachel's boyfriend, who was annoying everyone with his jealousy. They showed a letter he had sent from Nottingham around the time Rachel went missing. The neighbors also confirmed that John Turner was the last person Rachel had been in contact with. The room they checked showed no signs of forced entry, robbery, struggle, or blood. Everything was in its place. The police found Rachel's diary, which might contain important clues. The police began to study the contents of the diary. They knew that John was possessive and jealous of his girlfriend, wanting to know her whereabouts and presence at all times. This behavior gradually began to annoy Rachel. Their conflicts often arose over this issue. On April 22, police met with John Turner. 22. During the conversation, John expressed concern about his missing girlfriend. He was asked to describe his activities during the time Rachel went missing. John mentioned that they had a great weekend together and that everything was fine before they broke up. He said that he woke up early, showered, and that they had sex in the afternoon. After lunch, they went to Oxford Station together at around 4:15 p.m., taking a bus. They had a few hours before their train arrived, and while waiting, they bumped into a friend of Rachel's at around 5 p.m. The three of them went to a local coffee shop and had coffee. Rachel's friend was described as a dark-skinned man with long hair, wearing ripped jeans and a black jacket. He was similar in appearance to John, except for his dark skin. John admitted that he could not remember the man's name because they had just met and he did not expect to become friends with him. According to John, the man offered to drive Rachel home in his car. She agreed, and then John and Rachel said goodbye. John returned to Nottingham, while Rachel went with her friend to her apartment. However, John's story about the man was very suspicious. The police suspected that John was lying, and he quickly became the prime suspect in Rachel's disappearance, as she had been missing for a long time, leading to concerns that she might be dead or imprisoned. Urgent action was needed. First, it was important to learn more about the prime suspect, as he was the last known person to have had contact with Rachel, and his story about a black man needed further investigation. Rachel's disappearance left everyone baffled because none of her roommates or friends remembered her having such a friend. In order to gather more witnesses, the police shared information about the case. From the beginning, there was no reason to think that she had run away. The police first checked this possibility by talking to Rachel's family and friends. Rachel had no problems with her loved ones, friends, studies, or personal life. She was eagerly preparing for exams, which made it impossible for her to not attend. Rachel never complained about any problems, nor did she suffer from drug addiction or mental problems. People like her usually do not run away, and all of her belongings were left untouched. This allowed the police to rule out the possibility that she had run away on purpose. The police were skeptical of John's testimony and assigned a police officer to approach him and gain his trust. The officer's job was to observe John's reactions and behavior while updating him on the investigation. From the beginning, the officer suspected John of lying to them, noticing that he became nervous when talking about Rachel, despite his attempts to hide it. Despite these suspicions, a week of surveillance did not reveal any useful information to help the case. Meanwhile, the police were searching the neighborhood for witnesses, K9 units were working with dogs, and divers were examining local waters. several people remembered seeing John. But no one could confirm that he had left the house with Rachel. In addition, he had not been behaving suspiciously, so this witness's testimony did not add anything to the search. During this time, John continued to cooperate with the investigation. He even helped create a composite sketch of the man who, according to him, was supposed to drive Rachel back to her apartment. John believes this friend was responsible for her abduction. It has now been 2 weeks and police believe she is no longer alive. No ransom demands have been made, ruling out kidnapping as a motive. Search teams, including police, rescue workers and volunteers, have scoured a large area around Oxford, including drains and boating holes, but their efforts have been in vain. The police examined Rachel's diary and discovered her true feelings for John, a disturbing mix of hatred and pity. She expressed that she was unable to confront him directly or leave because she was afraid. Rachel had no genuine feelings for John, and her Valentine's Day gestures were more like a duty than a genuine expression of love. She knew that John was unstable and prone to losing control when angry. Afraid to face this reality, she admitted that their closeness was harmful and needed to end. In stark contrast, John described their relationship as happy, often emphasizing their frequent sexual activity during interrogations. Meanwhile, Rachel wrote of her disgust for him but felt powerless to stop their closeness. The police believe he may have killed her after reading her diary and discovering her true feelings, but more evidence is needed to prove his guilt. John has been actively cooperating with the investigation. He has attended a press conference to draw public attention to the search for Rachel and to help reconstruct the last day he spent with her. John describes the events at the station, claiming that a stranger, whom he says was a dark-skinned friend of Rachel's, was involved in her disappearance. The plan is to closely monitor John's reactions and behavior during these events, as experienced journalists can identify inconsistencies in his story. Many people have noted that John's description of the dark-skinned guy closely matches his appearance, including his clothing, except for his skin color. It is as if he was trying to describe himself but changing his race. In addition, the public took note of John's strange reactions when asked if he thought Rachel was still alive. He vaguely stated, in his heart, he wanted to think so, which further aroused suspicion among the conference attendees. Throughout the conversation, the guy's smile never seemed to disappear. This event greatly promoted the investigation into Rachel's disappearance. Several random witnesses who were watching the press conference on television clearly remembered the events of the day the girl disappeared at the train station. They contacted the police, saying that only John was at the cafe at the station, there was no girl or anyone else with him. Among the witnesses was a man sitting at the next table. He noticed that John seemed very nervous while drinking coffee, constantly looking around and startled. According to this witness, at one point, John took out a piece of paper and started writing. Perhaps Rachel was no longer alive at that time, and John began writing the same letter he had sent immediately after arriving in Notting. All this was done to create an alibi for himself. It has been established that John and Rachel went to the station together by bus, although there were no cameras there at that time. However, during that time in the city, all passengers who boarded the bus and paid for their tickets were monitored by special electronic devices. It was impossible to ride without paying. When checked, it was discovered that Rachel had not paid for the trip, which showed that she was not with John and could not have been there that day. Therefore, John lied. The reason for his lie remains unclear, and it is still unknown where Rachel's body could be. Police suspected that her remains might still be in the student apartment or somewhere on campus. Surveillance cameras covered the area around the building, but none of them showed John carrying any large, suspicious items. Police requested a floor plan of the student dormitory and discovered that there were voids under the floorboards. Police returned to the apartment where Rachel had lived and removed the floorboards. There, they found her body tightly packed in a bag, only 20 centimeters high. The cold weather at the time slowed the body's decomposition. In addition, the space between floors was structurally well ventilated, so the decomposing body did not emit a foul odor and was not discovered until 19 days after her death. Because Rachel's body was so well preserved, the forensic expert was able to determine the circumstances of her death with a high degree of accuracy within an hour. John was then questioned by the police. Initially, he refused to answer police questions. However, the next day, he confessed to killing Rachel. He said that after watching a football match, he proposed to Rachel, hoping that she would accept, but she refused. The couple exchanged a few words. As a result, he lost his temper and attacked her. In his confession, John admitted that he did not understand why she refused to get engaged. She did not want to answer for a long time but finally admitted that she had been having an affair and that she was not sure that she was ready to commit her life to John. In response, he insulted her. Rachel tried to hit him, and after the slap, he lost control and pinned her down on the chair with his weight, preventing her from moving. John claimed that he did not remember what happened next. When he regained consciousness, he found himself sitting on a couch in front of Rachel's lifeless body. Forensic experts confirmed that Rachel had been strangled. There was a deep, thin mark on her neck, indicating the use of an object rather than hands. The tie Rachel had given him for Christmas was missing from the crime scene and from John's belongings, believed to have been used to kill her. After a while, he decided to dispose of the body. Unable to get the body out of the building, he put it in a bag, removed the floorboards from Rachel's room, and stuffed the body into a small space. He then quietly reinstalled the floorboards. John then packed his things and headed to the bus station. While waiting for the train at a coffee shop, he wrote a letter to Rachel. In the letter, he thanked her for the weekend they spent together and mentioned a black man who was supposed to drive her home, which was a made-up story. He had invented this character to support the lie he had created. He also expressed concern for his girlfriend, who would be alone for several days. After sending the letter, he called her several times and left messages on her answering machine. John then wrote another letter, addressed to Rachel in New Mexico, saying that he had tried to call her several times during the week and was very worried, hoping she would call back soon. This deception allowed him to fool the police and the public for 19 days. Afterward, despite his confession, John Turner maintained his innocence. In December 1991, John claimed that his actions were in self-defense. He wanted to avoid a life sentence for premeditated murder, so he argued that the girl's death was accidental. Rachel was described as argumentative and unfaithful, often insulting John. John also stressed the humiliation he suffered at the hands of Rachel. He had erectile dysfunction due to the disease and claimed that she constantly criticized him for it. This was especially difficult during the outbreak when he was unable to have sex with her due to pain in his groin and abdomen. In court, his lawyer portrayed him as the victim. He was a caring man in love, dreamed of marrying Rachel and proposed to her twice, both times being rejected. Of course, all of this is not true, because judging by the diary entries, the girl was generally uncomfortable with intimate contact with John. There is no evidence that Rachel had any intrigue or relationship with anyone else. Rachel's close friends did not know about any other guy. Many believe that she made up the story of the affair to justify her quick breakup with John, but it is possible that she never actually said this, it was just his word. In the end, the jury did not believe John and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the right to parole. John's story does not end there. While serving his sentence, he developed a relationship with a 20-year-old woman who looked exactly like Rachel. She learned about him through a newspaper article and became interested, believing that he had been wrongly convicted. Despite being imprisoned, they began a romantic relationship. lawyers continued to fight for John's release and maintained his innocence. In 2003, after 11 years behind bars, John was paroled. He returned to New Zealand, intending to start his life over. His girlfriend, whom he met while in prison, followed him to New Zealand to attend university in Whanganui, the city where John lived. Apparently, 11 years in prison did not benefit John because he then attacked and began strangling the new girl, who believed he was innocent. John was 49 at the time. Fortunately, the attack was not serious and the girl was able to escape without serious injury. According to several witnesses and victims, John had lost control of his temper several times in the 6 months leading up to the incident. It was clear that he had anger management issues. John often became jealous and turned small problems into big arguments, often insulting his partner in front of others. Some time after the initial incident, the situation recurred and he attacked her again. During this time, the couple were staying at a motel in the city of Whanganui. There, they argued again. John threw his girlfriend onto the bed, raised his fists and punched her in the face while holding her down with his weight. However, he regained his composure and left the room. A few hours later, the girl texted John, saying that she was ending the relationship. She said that he was dangerous and needed to attend an anger management program. In response, he flew into a rage again, returned to the motel and stormed into the room. He attacked her, tore her clothes off, demanded sex, hit her on the head several times and threatened to kill her. In 2018, the girl reported John to the police and he was charged with assault. He was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison. The sentence was relatively light because the conviction occurred in New Zealand. If the attack had happened in the UK, he would have faced a life sentence. Despite the attack, his new girlfriend told the media that she believes anger management is still an issue for John and that he needs help. She hopes he can control his anger and that they can rekindle their relationship, despite the mental and physical abuse he has inflicted on her. In court, she admitted that he had threatened to kill her if she tried to leave him, although she did not take the threat seriously. John has recently been released from prison, but his current situation is unknown.